and you just pass the budget. How did that happen? The Speaker, secondly, is to question that county executive committee member responsible for finance in Vihiga. How do you just wake up in the morning and go and table your budget before the assembly without it being approved by the executive? Where does that happen? The Speaker, you know, if we begin to make accountability personal, then people will learn and will encounter fewer mistakes. This CEC member responsible for finance in Vihiga must be held to account for this kind of thing that he has done and the misfortunes that he is occasioning the people of Vihiga. The Speaker, secondly, I want to agree that the Speaker, extraordinary situations call for extraordinary measures. We also the other day, when our President at night went out to open hospitals to deal with an extraordinary situation. This matter now is before a court of law. The Speaker, it's incumbent upon the courts to expedite this process. So, Mr. Speaker, the people of Vihiga stop suffering unnecessarily. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, and this is very personal to me, I am a personal friend of the county of Vihiga. You know very well, Mr. Speaker, that you and I and the Senator of Vihiga are helping him to reconstruct his former school, Kapsotik Primary School. And when the people of Vihiga suffer, we as friends of Vihiga feel the pain. So we want to see this matter expedited and the people of Vihiga served and served very well. The Speaker, I thank you.
Senator Cheriot. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this chance. Mr. Speaker, I sympathize with the people of Vihiga. This is quite an unfortunate situation that leaders whom they've elected to office and they've entrusted with the affairs of their county, and all they expect, they've dutifully done their part, paid their taxes, and all they expect is services. When they go to the county hospitals, those who work in various county offices are well remunerated, so that when they go to receive the various services that people seek from county governments, they find it to be working. But I think of all the bizarre and weirdest of petitions and pleas that have come to this House since 2013, of the many weird things that happen in our counties, Mr. Speaker, this one is a winner. That a county government, an executive, the county executive committee, which includes the governor, his deputy, and the ministers, cannot agree. Mr. Speaker, this calls into question the competence of the good governor of Vihiga and the county assembly as well, because Senator Wambua has mentioned something quite clear. It may not be known to maybe many colleague senators, but I see this practice a lot in the National Assembly, and it's the same in our county assemblies as well, that before a budget is passed, various ministers appear before the respective assembly committees to make pleadings of their budget and say, please include this. This is part of our programs. It will be good if you finance. Then members of the county assembly will sit and say, while A, B, C, D were your request, due to the limitation of resources, we can only fund A, B, and C. By the time this county assembly passed and approved this budget, that it only took the watchful eye of a diligent citizen to actually go to court, and the court seems to have agreed with him, then it points out to us, Mr. Speaker, that even us as a Senate, we still have a lot of mentorship to do to many of our county assemblies. Vihiga is not the only case. There are various other county assemblies, Mr. Speaker. We have witnessed actually, and we have seen this, even when we've handled various petitions that have come to our various committees, Mr. Speaker, where you see county assemblies where the MCAs are more vigorous in the defense of the executive than even the county executive members themselves. Therefore, as a Senate, the House that has a constitutional mandate and duty to be a defender of devolution and ensure that it is properly entrenched in our country, we are also being put on our notice of how much have we done in terms of being the big brother to our various county assemblies. so that we teach them and understand some of these basic things. Of course, it's not within our direct duty and responsibility, but I think under the spirit of cooperation, being both institutes that are passionate about devolution and expect it to succeed, we need to do our work diligently. My only plea, Mr. Speaker, is that the court that has this matter will expedite this case first of all, so that sanity can be restored in this county. Citizens can begin to at least enjoy and receive services that they are now being denied, as has been mentioned to us by Senator Haniri. Then, of course, regularize. But of course, in a few months' time, the people of Vihiga will be presented with an opportunity to either choose to suffer or rectify the mistake that they made. That decision is not for this House to make. It will be made in Vihiga. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, Honorable Senators, I want to agree that this is a weighty matter. And as a House that defends devolution, we cannot abdicate our responsibility. I'm therefore directing the Committee on Devolution and Finance to travel to Vihiga on Monday, investigate the circumstances that have led to this, and report back to this House. So I'm directing the Secretariat to facilitate the members of those two committees to do their work, so that Senate is not only just seen, but we actually act to defend devolution. Next order. Next statement is by Mercy Chebeni. Mercy Chebeni.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I raise pursuant to Standing Order number 47-1 to make a statement of general topical concern on the increase of violence against children. Mr. Speaker, sir, globally, violence against children has increasingly become a public health, human rights, and development priority due to its significant negative impacts on children and as a society as a whole. Kenya is a signatory to the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child and the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, representing a commitment towards response and prevention of all forms of violence against children. Mr. Speaker, sir, Kenya has also made regional commitments to end violence against children with the ratification of the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child in 2000. This charter recognizes all of the rights guaranteed in the Convention on the Rights of Child and also takes consideration of the specific rights of African children based on their unique contexts and cultures. Mr. Speaker, sir, Kenya is also committed to the African Union Agenda 2063 that speaks to the Africa we want, which includes aspiration number 6, that speaks to an Africa whose development is people-driven, relying on the potential of African people, especially its women and youth, and caring for the children. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, Kenya's Constitution of 2010, Article 53, provides for the protection of children from abuse, neglect, harmful cultural practices, all forms of violence, inhuman treatment and punishment, and hazardous or exploitative labor. The Constitution also protects the children's rights to education, nutrition, shelter, health, and parental care. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, we have the Children's Act of 2001 that articulates the child's right to protection from abuse, harmful cultural practices, and sexual exploitation, among others. Mr. Speaker, sir, the first violence against children survey was carried out in 2010, and it found out that 76% of females and 80% of males aged between 18 and 24 had experienced violence at least once in their childhood, indicating a high level of childhood violence in the country. The second survey, Mr. Speaker, sir, was carried out in 2009 that found out that nearly half of the females, that is 45.9%, and more than half of males, 56.1%, experienced childhood violence in Kenya. Among the 15.6% of females who experienced childhood sexual violence, nearly two-thirds, that is 62.6%, experienced multiple incidents before age 16. Physical violence is the most common type of violence experienced in childhood in Kenya, Mr. Speaker, sir. and nearly 2 out of 5 females, that is 38.8%, and half of males, 51.9%, experience childhood physical violence by parents, caregivers, and and relatives, affecting nearly 3 in 10 females and 2 in 5 males in the country. Mr. Speaker, sir, the consequences of child abuse in Kenya is often very devastating, causing negative effects, things to do with physical health, social mobility and success of the child.
What's your point of order?
Especially mental health.
There's a point of order, Senator Chebeni.
Mr. Speaker, I am inside the chambers and I can hardly hear Senator Mercy Chebeni. Mr. Speaker, for the good of the very important message he's making, can she come close to the mics? Mr. Speaker, not to me, to the mic. Mr. Speaker, and as audible as possible for purpose of her message being amplified as it should.
Maybe you can lower your mask.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll try to be as loud as I can. But I think I'm okay now. Mr. Speaker, allow me to continue.
Proceed.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, sir, as I was saying, the effects of child abuse in Kenya to children are very devastating. It causes negative outcomes.
What's your point of order, Senator Orengo?
Mr. Speaker, have you realized the persistence of the senator from Elgeyo Marakwet in his demand that the senator, distinguished gracious lady, should come closer? I thought he would say, can you increase the volume? And even after the dear lady has increased her volume, the senator from Murkomen now is not talking, he's just doing this.
What's your point of order, Senator Murkomen?
Mr. Speaker, Senator Mercy Chebeni is my young sister and a person I'd like her to succeed, Mr. Speaker, in whatever she does in this House. And Mr. Speaker, I want the people of Kenya to remember her, Mr. Speaker, as a person who articulated issues that affect Kenyans, were firmly in an audible manner, Mr. Speaker, and in a manner that will be remembered not just in the Hansard, but by the people of Kenya. That is my only interest, Mr. Speaker, in this matter.
Order. Senator Murkomen, the concern was come closer. And what we were complaining about was about her voice not being audible. So the two have no relationship. So if you have any other interest, you will pursue them out of this house. Proceed, Senator. Proceed. I'm not giving you, Senator Murkomen, take your seat. Don't take your seat, Senator Murkomen. Let's allow her to proceed. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will now continue. Mr. Speaker, as I was saying, the consequences of child abuse in Kenya is very devastating, causing negative outcomes to the children of this country. Issues to do with health, social mobility, mental health, among others, Mr. Speaker. Indeed, violence against children affects the entire social ecology, from the individual to the full society, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, cases of child abuse have almost tripled in the recent past and made worse during this COVID-19 pandemic period. Physical abuse, defilement, and child neglect and abduction remain as the top forms of child abuse in the country, as reported in the mainstream media. And as late as yesterday, Mr. Speaker, on the news, you could hear that a person, I don't know whether they were in their right mind, took several children and killed them after torturing them, Mr. Speaker. So there's an issue of abduction, and torture, Mr. Speaker, and it is not fair that young kids get to die at such an early age, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, a society that cannot protect its children has no future, given that children are the future. The government needs to put in place measures to ensure that the rights of children are protected according to Article 53 of the Constitution. There's also need to raise awareness on a nationwide helpline service that operates 24 hours a day and how this can be accessed by the public, Mr. Speaker. The government also needs to ensure the implementation of the National Prevention and Response Plan on Violence Against Children in Kenya of 2019 to 2023 to accelerate evidence-based multi-sectoral actions to address violence against children and to reduce the prevalence of childhood violence. That is, a child experiencing at least one form of physical, emotional, or sexual violence. Mr. Speaker, there's also need to sensitize the public on child protection and to continue to strengthen the existing community structures to play a key role in the identification and referral of children in need of protection services, Mr. Speaker. There's also need for child agencies in the country, like the police, the Department of Children's Services, judiciary, among other agencies, to work closely together in cooperation to ensure that matters relating to children are handled very well and are prioritized in their departments, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there's also need to ensure that there's training to the child protection workforce who deal with children once they've been rescued. And also they need to know how to prevent and respond in collaboration with multi-sector stakeholders to include issues to do with health and education professionals, Mr. Speaker. In conclusion, violence against children should no longer be tolerated and can only be stopped by collective efforts of ordinary citizens, policymakers, governments, and international stakeholders. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you. You realize we have less than 10 minutes for statement hour. So I'll call the next statement, understanding order. We did agree, we did agree, and as one was being blamed for, yes. Senator Nyamunga, Senator Petronila Were? She's not in. Senator Rose Nyamunga.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. But even as we agree on some of these things, I find it very, very difficult to let some of these statements just go like that. And by the time we come back to them, maybe we not even have an opportunity to say anything about it. Because, Mr. Speaker, I'm not coming.
You are the ones. You are in this meeting in the morning. And all that was being directed to the Speaker, and you are a member of the panel. So we cannot be going forth and backwards.
Mr. Speaker,
proceed with your statement.
I rise pursuant to Standing Order 48.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare on the status of the Kenya Youth Employment and Opportunities Project. In the statement, the committee should, 1, explain the intended goal of the project and indicate what it has achieved so far. 2, provide a status report on the enrollment of youth in the project and outline the challenges facing the implementation. 3, state the amount in stipend offered to the recruits by the government. And lastly, explain why recruits from cycle 4 of the project are yet to receive their stipend, and state the measures put in place to address the numerous complaints on timely remittance of stipend to the recruits. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, that brings us to the end of statements. Next order. Can the whips check whether we have numbers for a division before we go to the next order? Okay, next order.
Order number 8, the Community Health Services Bill, Senate Bills number 34 of 2020, second reading, division.
It's deferred for now.
Order number 9, the Investment Promotion Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 2 of 2021, second reading, division.
It's also deferred for now.
Order number 10, the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 33 of 2020, second reading, division.
Deferred for now.
Order number 11, the National Flag Emblems and Names Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 36 of 2020, second reading, division.
That's also deferred for now.
Order number 12, the County Vocational Education and Training Bill, Senate Bills number 6 of 2021, second reading.
Okay, resumption of debate. Senator Cherargei, you are on the floor. You have 17 minutes. The Vocational Education and Training Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. From the onset, as I said yesterday before the House went on recess, Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate the Chairperson, Standing Committee on Education, Senator Dr. Alice Milgo, with colleagues in the committee for this brilliant bill. The County Vocational and Training Bill 2021, Mr. Speaker, is a game changer because, Mr. Speaker, this is the time that we are establishing a legal framework in what we normally call village youth polytechnics, but many people would call it vocational training centers, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to say this bill has come at a very important stage. As we talk today, from 2013, for the last 8 years, Mr. Speaker, more than 140 TVET institutions have been established across the country. Of course, these are devolved functions, as has been captured by the fourth schedule. It is one of the devolved functions. But there has been a setback, Mr. Speaker, because normally, under conditional grant, there were 2 billion that was normally ring-fenced to ensure that the village or vocational training centers, I know the village polytechnics is not good. Let us use vocational training centers, Mr. Speaker. And this money was meant to spur the growth of at least village vocational training centers that we have in this country. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that two issues that I've seen that as a country, Mr. Speaker, we need to invest in a more, because someone predicted, Mr. Speaker, that in this decade, the last decade and the coming decade, this country is going to be more on infrastructure, more on building, and many other things that we need to build, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, we need to agree that we need welders, we need mercenaries, we need all these people, the people who can work. We need drillers, borehole drillers. We need also people who are firefighters, the bomberos, Mr. Speaker. So these people need to be trained, Mr. Speaker, and I think it's very important. Okay. Mr. Speaker, these people are very important in the growth of the economy. We as a country must invest in this. And I think I want to thank the chairperson and the Committee of Education for coming up. This is what we mean by bottom-up approach economy, Mr. Speaker. We must have people who are willing to be trained as welders, to be trained as electricians, to be trained as borehole drillers, to be trained as firefighters, masonry, among others, bomberos, Mr. Speaker. And I think it is very important, Mr. Speaker, that in the economy that we want to build, we want to start with where the people are, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I agree that there should be guiding principles that the bill has tried to establish, Mr. Speaker. When you look at clause 4, the Cabinet Secretary, of course, policy, examination standards, and I agree, curriculum, accreditation. You know, Mr. Speaker, there is what we call Kenya Trainers Technical College, where they train these trainers that are being used to train, especially as instructors. And I think KTTC, Mr. Speaker, should be the accrediting body that will give the license to many trainers. But the problem we are facing, Mr. Speaker, is that at the moment, and I did ask a statement with the Committee of Education, at the moment we don't have a proper guidelines on how these people are being trained, accredited. But Mr. Speaker, even as we hire trainers, most of the counties are hiring them on contractual basis, Mr. Speaker. They are not hiring them on permanent and pensionable. And I think the terms of service, Mr. Speaker, we should look so that the trainers are being able to be hired on permanent and pensionable, Mr. Speaker. Because I know counties are hiring them on contractual obligation, because most counties, Mr. Speaker, are also facing the issue of wage bill, Mr. Speaker. So on the issue of accreditation and ensuring that another aspect, Mr. Speaker, is ensuring examination standards. And I think it is important to have a uniform examination standards across the country, Mr. Speaker, especially in the county vocational training centers. And working with KTTC, we have also TVETA, that is the Technical Vocational Authority that has been established under the Act of 2013, Mr. Speaker. I think what is important, Mr. Speaker, another aspect I notice about the bill is that ability of transferring credit transfer. For example, if I'm in Chapter 8 Youth Polytechnic near my neighborhood, and you want to relocate to somewhere in Kaplamai, Youth Polytechnic somewhere in Mkwen sub-county, Mr. Speaker, then it makes easier for credit transfer, just the way we do in university. When you want to transfer from one faculty to another or from one university to another, I think there is a practice that has been practiced worldwide, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my only challenge, and I think obligations of the county government has been given. I think it is very important that we ensure there are two things that I wanted to note, that the county governments, and I think if this bill passes to the law, I hope the county governments, Mr. Speaker, should take even at least 2%, because this is a very critical area. This is an area where we want to build the human resource, the manpower, to be able to develop our country in terms of infrastructure, in terms of building, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, when this clause 5 talks about provide the funds necessary for the development, in my own opinion, and I hope county assemblies are watching, they should ensure now that we no longer ring-fence 2 billion that was meant for youth politics, Mr. Speaker, is very important. Mr. Speaker, another aspect I must applaud the bill for is ensuring that there is space for the people with special needs, both the trainees and the trainers. And I think that is very important, ensuring that infrastructure that we have, Mr. Speaker, is accessible to people with special needs, even the learners, the trainees, and the trainers. And I think it is very important, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that it is in place. And even the terms of service, Mr. Speaker, with the production of PWD card, they should be given a specific allowance to ensure that the trainees and the trainers are well catered for, Mr. Speaker. Another aspect, Mr. Speaker, on the uniformity of the curriculum, I agree that they should work with Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, KICD, to ensure we have a standardized format. But I'm happy in this bill, Mr. Speaker, it has said it will work with county governments so that counties can customize, especially counties where I come from in North Rift. We can specialize on issues of training of animal husbandry, things to do with agriculture-based, Mr. Speaker, and therefore the KICD among the KTTC and county governments, Mr. Speaker, as has been captured, is very important, Mr. Speaker, so that they can come up with a way of ensuring that we have a curriculum that is uniform, that the standardization, that what you are training in Wajir, what you are training in Nandi, what you are training in Kisumu, what you are training in Makueni is standardized. And I think it is important for both curriculum that we have, Mr. Speaker. On the issue of ensuring that the county government's obligation is occupational hazards and ensure that they are unique, because, Mr. Speaker, if you are training, for example, mechanics, you need a good workshop. You need a workshop that is functional, that has necessary issues of hazard, so that you know you are in a workshop. It is a garage, it is a laboratory, and many others. And in fact, Mr. Speaker, training of these people, you need unique equipments. And I think that is very important, that the design of workshop areas is very critical, Mr. Speaker, going to the future. So I think the obligation of the counties is so unique that even, and I'm happy, in one of the obligations under clause, Mr. Speaker, under clause 7 and clause 5 and 6, it talks about the county governments ensuring that they procure and ensure that there is place equipments, learning places, and ensuring that we do, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy the issue of special needs has been captured in clause 7 again, where other trainers who are not well versed with the issue of special needs, especially people living with disability, Mr. Speaker, I think it is important that refresher courses has been captured so that you train and build the capacity of most of these, Mr. Speaker, of our trainees. Mr. Speaker, what is of note, another aspect about this bill, is the fact that we have widened and invited the private sector. And I think this will spur the growth of county vocational training centers. And I'm happy that the private sector has been invited, and therefore licensing can be given. Even not only private sector, as private individuals, Mr. Speaker, you know, and also faith-based, Mr. Speaker. Faith-based organizations, Mr. Speaker, has also been given a central place in this training of vocational training centers, Mr. Speaker. We know faith-based organizations that have been sponsors in most of our schools, be either primary, secondary, universities, and I think it is important that we open up vocational training centers, not only to be run by public, but also faith-based organizations, Mr. Speaker, and also the sponsors that we know. I know there could be other meaning of sponsors on the streets, but these are sponsors that are faith-based that we should be given an opportunity, Mr. Speaker. And in as much as I know it might not, I don't know whether we'll amend this or not, Mr. Speaker, you cannot tell faith-based, you can start a training vocational center, then you tell the faith-based that it must be secular. I think the Committee of Education should look at this. Because, of course, we wouldn't want to say if it is sponsored by such a site faith, Mr. Speaker, then it should not be mandatory. I think it should be secular, Mr. Speaker. And I think that is what, I know it is important that we accommodate all Kenyans, regardless of their religion, tribe, and where they come from. And we are one nation, we are one people, Mr. Speaker, and I think it is important. Another aspect, Mr. Speaker, that is clause 11, to run through to allow my colleagues also to be able to contribute to this, is that, Mr. Speaker, I'm happy that the county government has been given opportunity to ensure that they capture in County Integrated Development Plan, is CIDP. And I think, for example, Mr. Speaker, a county like Uasin Gishu in the North Rift, they have been doing very well in terms of ensuring that there is training, county vocational training centers. I think from 2014 to 2021, at least they have sponsored more than 3,088 students, fully paid through the tuition subsidy program, through the full scholarship, among others. And I think it is the only county that I've seen they have been training bomberos, or what we call firefighters, Mr. Speaker. And I saw them launching something about firefighters and also issues of animal husbandry. And I think it is very important. And there is also issues of revolving fund. And when you look at the County Education Board, let me use Uasin Gishu because they are my neighbors, Mr. Speaker, is that they have really tried to train. Even they have been training borehole drillers, the people who drill holes. And I think that is very important, and they have been able to train. You know, now going into the future, Mr. Speaker, we need to drill water here and there, not other things, Mr. Speaker. And I think it is very important that as a county, counties must play their cardinal role of this devolved function, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when you, and I think going into the future, Mr. Speaker, and I agree there is the technical vocational training centers. I'm happy the government is giving them subsidies in terms of tuition, providing them, but I think there is a lot that we can do, Mr. Speaker, because all these things to be fixed, Mr. Speaker, it always needs somebody somewhere to be able to sacrifice, Mr. Speaker. Another aspect, Mr. Speaker, that I would want to note, Mr. Speaker, is on the issue of cancellation of license. I think we have given too much power to the county executive, and I think we need to review. I don't know how we can, but since this act, and I think the chair of education is noting this, or members, since we have already established a board of governance, the board of governors that run these county vocational training centers, Mr. Speaker, why would we give absolute power to county executive, Mr. Speaker, to be able to just cancel the license? And I think it is important, Mr. Speaker, that we use also board of governors so that you can review, you know, in any process, Mr. Speaker, and my learned seniors in this house, including my very good lecturer and teacher, Senator Murkomen, would tell me that there should always be administrative action, but there should be a process of appealing and looking for a way. So you can't just wake up one day and say because Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr.'s college is being run and therefore we need to cancel the license. The county executive should not be the last call of cancellation of that process. And I think, Mr. Speaker, and I'm happy that since we have board of governors, I think it is very important that we use board of governors, county executive, even county education board, so that there is a review process when your license is being cancelled, and I think that is important. Number two, Mr. Speaker, is I have seen in clause 18, where they are saying they are only consider application within 30 days. I think it should be 90 days, so that we can have a process before issuing you with the final license. We should also give you at least 90 days, we give you an interim license, we see if you have complied. And I think it is a common standard practice, so that we don't just, if we come to your place, Mr. Speaker, if it is a faith-based or a sponsored, or it is a public place, we come and cross-check. There is a checklist of what you should have done, so that it becomes an opportunity to ensure that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there is a training vocational center called Lenguse, somewhere in Timborwa, Mr. Speaker. And I visited that place. Mr. Speaker, that place is so unique, and I want to challenge the committee and even the counties. That place is that they have been able to sustain themselves by making things like furniture, selling them, and ensure they generate their own income. And I think we should not only turn these training vocational centers, Mr. Speaker, to only be the training ground. These are places you can, when I used to chair JLAC, Mr. Speaker, we used to go to prisons, and prisons are making good furniture. Why should we import things from China? You come to offices, we only have Chinese furniture all over. They are breaking down after 1 or 2 days. And you know, Mr. Speaker, we are well endowed, we are eating very well. So maybe those seeds that come from China, Mr. Speaker, are not as strong as that being made by prisons, Mr. Speaker. So I think this bill, Mr. Speaker, should include also of ensuring that we have prisons as part of also, I don't know how you will marry the chair of education, Senator Dr. Milgo, on how we can inculcate the prison service, so that we can also have a way of having training vocational centers, especially to counties that have prisons within them, to ensure also that they are part of this legal framework and ensure, Mr. Speaker, these people are able to train, Mr. Speaker. So on the BOG, Mr. Speaker, and I think the board, of course, we agree, Mr. Speaker, on the issue of the curriculum. I think we have agreed. I am happy that the KICD has been included, and then the authority, the TAVETA, the technical vocational and authority that was established in 2013, Mr. Speaker. What I can say in summary, Mr. Speaker, that this is a game changer. Mr. Speaker, when we are moving into the future of bottom-up approach economy, Mr. Speaker, I must say this is the bills we need. And I can assure Senator Milgo, if God gives us favor to be part of the change in this country, we shall implement this. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Zani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to support this bill. Now, this is a very, very important bill from the Education Committee, the County Vocational Education and Training Bill, that comes very close to the ECD bill that was recently passed into an act, and I think that was a big achievement. We know from Schedule 4 that the responsibility of the Education Committee at Senate level is ECD and vocational training. And that's why it was so important to come up with a bill that streamlines the sector. There's a lot that's already happening within the counties. There's allocation that is given to the counties in terms of vocational training and to the centers. But most counties are doing things differently. Some are doing very, very well. Some maybe not as well. And what we'd like to do is to have a level across each of the counties for the standards that should be maintained. And the best way to bring about these standards is to be able to give procedures, formats, rules, indeed legislation to ensure that that is well streamlined. Now, to do this effectively also, the Education Committee has, like we did with ECDE, bring together the CEC members from the various counties and try to find out what is happening. So before we're able to put the legislation for ECD as a reference point, we had a lot from the counties, from the CEC, in terms of what is happening and what they are doing specifically within their counties. So it was important also for the county vocational education and training process that we get to hear what is happening with the counties, what source of allocation is going on in there, what problems do they have, how are they able to cope with the various problems over time, so that by the time we are engaging, and Mr. Speaker, as we're engaging with this legislation, there's a lot of already information that is coming through public participation, through some of our various stakeholders, just to identify and ensure that we are on the right track. Indeed, some of the things we are emphasizing on are centers of excellence that are very, very key. We are also emphasizing that all counties are unique in their own ways. So, for example, in Kericho, we'd want to hear more about tea production, what sort of special courses are being done in regard to that, from the course on marine science, the blue economy, and each of the counties, so that there's a value addition. And that's why when we are going into the curriculum, as much as that will be standardized, because we have both the responsibilities at the national and the county level, we want to be able to have space for counties to be able to come up with these centers of excellence or come up with specific programs that are going to be very, very important in those specific counties. So, Mr. Speaker, some of the issues that we've been dealing with at the level of the various counties is to find out, for example, what is their resource allocation, their annual resource allocation, and how are they using that allocation. The measures that the county governments have taken to ensure that the centers are adequately resourced, stating the data on the number of well-equipped workshops, laboratories, classrooms, libraries, etc. And with regard to this, emphasizing that it is very important to ring-fence the money that is meant to be used for TVET. Mr. Speaker, we have about 2 billion shillings that went to TVET centers specifically before under conditional grants. That has now changed because we don't have conditional grants. That money is just going as a package to the counties. And we're requesting governors and members of county assemblies and also county executive committee members to ensure that a system for ring-fencing that money so that it's used as it's meant to be used before. Meaning coming up with very innovative way. And Mr. Speaker, I'd like to report that from one of the counties recently, we had, for example, that they want to tag the money per enrollment rates, so that there's a specific amount for enrollment for particular student enrollment. And I think that is one way, but I'm sure many counties are looking for dynamics and the dynamism of how to put that into place. Strategies employed by the county governments to ensure that there's accurate, timely, and relevant data on the labor market, which enables coordination and development of programs aimed at closing the gap between skills supply and skills demand locally and nationally. We know now, and especially as we move towards what we used to call before blue-collar jobs versus white-collar jobs, but really this is the direction countries are going as far as industrialization is concerned. And we had, and there was a supplement yesterday on the World Skills Day on why it is so important to have more skilled labor, because that's where the jobs are. So that now when you're training, you're actually able to move out and get a job. Number two, we have allocations of up to 30,000 for students to go for the various courses. So the time is right. If you look at many of the developed countries and the labor that they're seeking from other countries, they're seeking on these skilled labors, you know, from plumbing to hairdressing, to carpentry work. All these now are areas where you can easily get a job or you can actually self-employ. But what is the labor demand before we can actually give the supply? And we're requesting and seeking with our county governments as we engage with them for an analysis of the data. And there are countries like, for example, we had a program, it was called, I think, CICAN program. It was a Kenyan program, where there was an element of linking labor demand and supply directly, so that now you're in communication with the industries. From the word go, you know what do the industries want, and in the training as part of the internship for the students, they actually get attached to the labor industry. And from the labor industry, from the word go, they can learn from the most relevant machines. Mr. Speaker, in most of the training centers, in some of the vocational centers, we find some sort of training is going on, but it's based on machinery that was used maybe 10 years ago. But if the industry wants 20 plumbers, they can state and indicate what sort of infrastructure is needed, help in that, and have a sort of collaboration between the centers and the training so that these are appropriately trained, and immediately after, through internship programs, have them move into their jobs swiftly. Many countries have been able to do this successfully, and it has really helped. We are also asking on the number of training centers, and in terms of the ICT influence that they have, the sort of access that they have, the digital content that they have within the counties, because this is very, very critical. If we move to areas like procurement, for example, it's been done digitally. Procurement is now, you know, an online thing. So I remember when we were in one of the sessions of County Mashinani, we went to a county where we were able to engage, and I remember the governor of that county at that time had started a training center with computers, just to make sure that the young people there can actually be a step ahead. That's very, very critical. We're also asking them about the strategies and measures that they're putting in place to ensure that the disadvantaged groups have equal opportunities and access in the centers and across different programs, and also the strategies employed by the county government to address the existing challenges related to implementation of TVET policies and legal framework. So as they are giving us this information, we're able also to put this through in terms of the legislation that is required, the challenges that they're facing. For example, the issue of integration into TVET centers, very, very important, so that we have TVET centers where also the special needs come in as integrated rather than having separate centers altogether. In the pullout in yesterday's newspapers, where we held the World Skills Day, they talked about the importance of agribusiness and agro-processing, that is the way forward, that we need to have an appropriate approach which really has these sectors in commercialization. And in Kenya, where 80% reside in the rural area and where 80% are involved in agriculture, then this becomes a very important business for us. The route for industrialization, apart from mechanization and manufacturing, is clearly in agribusiness. And if we can be able to progress that, that would be very good. The policy is already in place, and a good feeling. We've been able to talk to the PS, we've been able to talk also to the CS in this sector, and from the Council of Governors chair in charge of TVET, we've heard a lot about what they are doing to ensure that TVET Center remains abreast, but it's only really a question of checking on one or two things. And we did intend, and I think we're still planning as a committee, to proceed to these counties to see exactly what is happening on the ground, and ensuring that the machination is in place, that the teaching is going well, that what they're learning is relevant. Kenya is also a member of the acclaimed World Skills International, which means we need to be able to showcase that we are moving an inch further to ensuring that we are focusing on skills and how to develop those skills. These technical and vocational skills, therefore, need to be put into that place. That report also said there were 26 centers of excellence, and we also had the same from the chair, Council of Governors, so that is very critical. Mr. Speaker, this bill is very straightforward. It intends to really just put the structures into place to ensure that TVET centers can run in a very systematic way, right from the elaboration and the sort of bodies that are coming into it. We find already we have the council, that is the Technical and Vocational Education and Training Curriculum Development Assessment and Certification Council, that has lots of responsibilities in the training, and this is going to be put in the act. We have the County Education Board. A lot of responsibility, as I heard Senator Cherarkei say, has been put on the County Executive Committee member. But going through the various clauses of the bill, the County Executive Committee member, the CCM, is working in collaboration with the authority. We're not giving the CCM direct responsibility on their own. We are saying that any decision that has to be made, and lots of the decisions have to be made at the county level, are going to be made at the level of the CCM, but she or he has the responsibility to ensure that that is well entrenched within the authority. We also have the Board of Governors, and this will be very instrumental also in streamlining some of these issues. Then we have a very important body. This is the Integrated Vocational Education and Training Center, which is the vocational and training center designed to accommodate and provide courses and training suitable for the needs of the trainees. Then we have the National Qualifications Framework. This is where the issue of quality control then takes place, because we don't want to have one county that is completely ahead of another, or one county that is having a different quality standard, because at the end of the day, anybody who comes from any of these centers should be able to go somewhere and be able to fit in. We have also the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development that is going to be key in establishing the curriculum, but also giving a fair measure of flexibility within the counties, working with KICD to be able to come up with those very innovative special courses at the county level that might be very, very important for that to be processed. So again, we're looking at issues specifically in terms of the structure. We have the council, which has been put into place. We have the curriculum body, which has been put into place. We have obligations at national and county governments that are well spelled out within the bill. We have the role of management of the vocational and training center that is critical. We have also the establishment of systems of accreditation that are going to be relevant, and accreditation both at the private level for private institutions and also for public institutions, how the cancellation of a license should happen. We have the management of vocational education and training centers. We have the management board of the vocational education and training centers that is a critical arm to take us through the various functions of how specific management should be done. So like the ECD bill, we expect that after this bill is enacted and now becomes law, that it's possible to even have an evaluation framework within the specific counties. For example, in the ECD, we had the best classroom model, how that model should look like, how should that classroom look like. So when you go to the counties, you know it should be this way, the desk should be this short for the children, this is how the playing ground should be, you're looking out for the swings. The same thing with the TVET centers. When you come, the laboratories, the classrooms, and what we have been emphasizing as we meet the various counties is that we need to have equity within the counties. Like, for example, when you look at the placing of the centers, of the TVET centers, some counties have more centers placed in certain wards. And we are asking each of those counties not only to give us their resource allocation, but the spread of these centers and what exactly they are doing across the various wards so that we can see that these are evenly spread. And then also how the remuneration should be done, the record keeping, all that is in place. The standards and quality of education, very, very important, and I've already mentioned that. So in a sense, between the council, between the board of governors, between the ECC member, and between the Kenya Institute of Development, we have a scheme that will be able to put everything together. Madam Speaker, allow me just to go through the clause 4, which is on the obligations of the national government, very, very briefly, who have been put within this bill in charge of development of an education, training, and research policy, and making sure that that policy remains current, that that policy is able to change according to the needs of what Kenya wants in terms of training, the development of the examination standards and certification. These have to be at the national level. And Schedule 4 is very clear about that. The policy standards, curriculum development remains at national. And this section, therefore, just highlights that even for TVET education, that this is very important. Establishment of partnerships, how that should be done, that remains all at national level, and the policy for doing that remains at national level. Then we have at clause 5 the obligations of the county governments. I just want to pinpoint 1 or 2, also to save time for other members also would like to contribute. Procedures and putting in place necessary training infrastructure. You know, it is very, very risky when we have members who are training for specific trades. Some of these are so technical that if you have not been able, for example, to drive that machine or to work on that machine, you'll not be able to do a good job. So equipping becomes very, very critical, learning and teaching resources. Yet we do have a problem of the resources that are going to the counties, and we've been asking questions, especially on the allocation and the resourcing of the counties. We find that some specific centers are better resourced than others. Some have received slightly more money than others, and we're, as we engage, trying to at least get that equitability. But what we're also doing within the counties is to try to get that excellence centered, and that becomes the point of reference. So many of the county governments we're talking to, they're saying we are not yet there 100% because of the issue of resourcing, but we are getting there gradually. The bill comes in to say this is the standard, and this is the coordination mechanism, and this is how to get there. Formulating specific programs, plans, and policy for the county, responsible for staffing and personnel within the counties, and all those in clause 4, carrying out public awareness and advocacy programs in relation to vocational education. I know there are certain counties where we have some of the education and vocational centers literally closed. You know, there's little going on within the counties. There is a time in Kenya where there was a lot of focus on education at university level and transition into university level. I think we are rechanging and relooking at that policy and are now coming back to emphasize on TVET. But those centers need to be made to be able to be made to come alive so that they can do what they're expected to do. For example, the CC member can just make sure that there's no center that is closed, that extra effort is made because we have very many youth. And we know part of that problem was because of this issue of white collar, blue collar, and everybody felt that being successful meant only going to the university. But now we know we want to have people with skills who can be able to go there into the market and be able to do what is expected out of them. Very quickly, the management at clause 6 clearly gives the role of management for TV, employing qualified instructors, administering the curriculum, quality services. Clause 7, subclause 2, the role of the CEC member is put there very, very clearly. And at clause 8, the whole issue of registration. the categories of vocational training, given both the private and the public. But I just want to emphasize on part of the dynamic that happens, especially at Clause 4, and Senator Omogeni is looking at me because he knows this issue, we came through it when we were doing the mediation for the ECDE, and the role of the sponsor, and the limitation of the sponsor in terms of how they can. Madam Speaker, my time is up. Will you give me just 2 minutes to wrap up? Or?
Yes, 1 minute to wrap up.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Let me just wrap up that at the end of it all, sometimes you find in the training center the complications of having a sponsor who wants to dictate what has to happen in the center. But according to the Basic Education Act, once a sponsor is mentioned, then that becomes a responsibility, but most other institutions will be there, the Board of Governors, to ensure control for that. Madam Speaker, I think this bill changes the landscape of TVET, and even as we go to the functions of the board and all the other clauses and the management of TVET centers, and at the last stage at Part 4, the standards and quality, it really just all summarizes and brings to TVET center the importance of ensuring that this educational sector is well streamlined. I thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Senator Langat. Christopher Andrew.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for also giving me this opportunity to add my voice into this very important bill. You remember, Madam Speaker, that this particular bill was initiated during the time I was the Chair of Education, and you are still my Vice Chair during that time. We had realized the importance of this particular bill, Madam Speaker, especially when we went round outside this particular country, especially when we were in Canada, on matters to do with vocational education to solve issues of unemployment in our country. We had also realized that the Act of Education was only very much limited to technical training institutions, that is the TTIs, which we had realized a lot of achievement from the same, especially through the capitation of that 1,000 which was given to students in technical training centers. I do remember very well, Madam Speaker, during that time, that the capitation that was given to students in technical training college ensured a lot of enrollment. The enrollment moved from around 180,000 to around 800,000, actually giving an opportunity to most of the youths to get skills that will help them on self-employment in our country. But we had realized that there were a lot of challenges on what used to be called village polytechnics, which in this particular case currently, they are actually county vocational training centers. There was a lot of disconnection, especially on the progress of the particular students that are getting to these vocational training centers upwardly. We remember very well, most of them also had we had also a challenge on matters to do with the cutoff. At what level should a student get into these particular vocational training schools? Up to this particular moment, without this particular bill, it is not clear. You find any student, anybody getting there. But this particular bill, it's so important, Madam Speaker, that it will get standards. It will set standards on entry performance and also standards on the curriculum and many other things. So this is a very important bill because it captures those particular students at the lowest level. And that is the level where we have got so many of our youths. And I want to say that in as much as we've captured through technical training, most of those students who complete in Form 4, it's not clear, and we've not captured very well the pupils that complete without progressing to secondary schools in primary. And this particular bill will actually get for those particular students. So I want to say, Madam Speaker, right from the very onset in Part 1, I'm so happy on the clear definition of terms, especially it has created actually a lot of clarity on various terms that will be used to define
this particular level of education. I'm very happy also on the application of the national government. Up to this particular time, there is a distinction between the national government and management of the county governments on this particular level of vocational training. So I'm very happy that the national government is now getting involved. Remember very well, currently they are run by management appointed by the government, county governments, and there is no clear progress between the county government management of these particular training centers and the national government. So another one is the obligation of the county government. It is now very clear, and I'm very sure this will create smooth progress in this particular level. When it comes to part 2, establishment of registration and accreditation of vocational education and training centers. This is also a very important area, Madam Speaker, especially on the 10th one on sponsorship and the registration of these particular centers. Currently, there are so many that have been studied. There are no standards for, there is no standard criteria to enable them to be registered. And I want to say this should also go down to most of our primary schools. It is still regulars. Wherever we go to our counties, you find our primary schools that has been operating without registration up to standard 6, standard 5, and the rest. So it is worst when it comes to this particular vocational training. You find already there is an existing vocational training in a particular place, not registered, and it is operating, Madam Speaker. So wherever even sponsors comes around, the church sponsors and the rest, whenever they want to provide assistance to these particular training centers, they are not registered. The land that they are operating on, sometimes they don't have title deeds and the rest. So, but this particular bill has provided very clearly on those particular requirements that will enable them to progress. They have also invited the private sector. I want to emphasize on this one, Madam Speaker. You remember very well, you've been in education for a long time, where before restrictions came in, you could find even some very weird colleges on top of us in various urban centers. They were very interesting, and they could really interfere with the progress of education of our youths. But now I want to say, when it comes to this one, there will be a control on those particular private entrepreneurs who would like to go further to the point of commercializing education without taking care of the standards per se. So this one is so important because I've seen there is a proper control on the private registration of these particular training centers. I'm also very happy on the upward progress. Remember, up to this particular time, our vocational training centers do not allow our students to complete and go to TTI and finally to do their diplomas, degree, and the rest. But this particular, this was a great contribution during our time by Professor Ongeri. Remember, he had said that we must provide a progressive movement of this particular student, so that if they could not be able to go to high school and go to university, vocational training should not be an end in itself, but it should provide that particular progression from that particular vocational training center in the village, that somebody can progress up to university and even get the PhD. So I want also to commend Madam Speaker on the uniformity when it comes to management of vocational education and training centers. Currently, every county is doing their own work. Remember, even we are very happy that the ECD bill was extended to, so that it has provided standards on the structures that are being used by our children, standards and uniformity when it comes to the employment of teachers and the rest. This also will be the same, Madam Speaker, on matters to do with management. You can find today a vocational training center in Bomet. Instructors are paid maybe as little as 6,000 per month. And when we go to Wasingishu, remember the vocational training centers we visited in Wasingishu, your county, where they were producing very marvelous and very important products in their centers. I could even remember one of the girls had booked you for an hairdressing. I don't know if you went there later on. But you see, if you check currently what is happening in those particular training centers, you would find that they are paying their teachers differently. And sometimes it becomes so discouraging to hear a teacher teaching in Muranga earning 3 times a teacher teaching in Bomet. But this particular bill will provide uniformity on matters to do with the training standards of the instructors. Number 2 is it will provide also uniformity in payment. It will also provide uniformity on matters to do with entry performance of the students that will get into these particular institutes. I'm also very happy for the introduction of examination and competency assessment. This one I will still have to go deep into this one, Madam Speaker, so that we may make sure that we don't also get into an examination-oriented system. You remember very well that our students, the transformative intellectualism in our country is not clearly coming out on our products or our graduates. I remember one time when I was a lecturer in Mo University, there was a visiting professor from Germany, an engineer. And when we were traveling with him to Mo University from Nairobi, he was so worried about the status of our road. Worst came when we arrived at the university, and the second day, we were graduating about 1,300 engineers. And he could not see what is happening. He could not relate very well. There's so many engineers we are producing, and the types of production, the type of intellectual exhibition that is existing in our country. So we should make sure that this particular bill concentrates on pragmatic skills, developing the practical skills of our students without becoming too much examination oriented. This one will be very important. Finally, I want to mention something that it should also be very clear out of this particular bill. I've realized that most of our students, because of attitude, do not want to join vocational training skills. There are 2 things that are preventing our children from actually getting or actually embracing vocational training centers. One is the attitude. You find people in the village always telling them that if you cannot make to secondary school, you can always go to polytechnics. This makes them to develop a negative attitude toward getting into this particular institute. To enhance on this, Madam Speaker, 1, we should make sure that this, to encourage these young people from getting into this particular institution, 1, the government should invest so much in building very attractive structures and implement current technology into these particular institutions to encourage our students to go and train there. Number 2 is financing. The government should finance. I remember very well, the enrollment of our students in technical training centers was so poor until the government get in to give them loans and capitation. You can see, for example, Eldoret Polytechnic, which I was a member of the board one time. We used to have only 2,000 students. But when the government gave them capitation of 30,000 and access to the loans, the population of the students in Eldoret Polytechnic went up to 18,000 currently. So in as much as the government will not fully sponsor these particular students to these particular vocational training centers, we shall still have a challenge when it comes to enrollment of these particular areas. And I want to say, I was ashamed yesterday to see our students from the School of Medicine, University of Nairobi, going on strike at this time in this particular century because the institution has increased money to the point that our students cannot access some very important courses in engineering and medicine. This should be a high time that university education in this country should be free. The government should come out to define important courses which are marketable and even reduce the cost. It's not a matter of increasing the cost to the point that at this point of time, our students are on the streets because of these expenses. So I want to encourage that the government should fully sponsor these particular courses in these vocational training centers so that it may attract more learners and it will be a solution to the problems we are having. Our children will get skills and it will reduce crimes in our society because there are so many youths who are idling in our villages without doing anything. So I want to support this bill and I want to tell the current chair to really work on it and we shall fully support it because it is the lifeline of our youth. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Langat. Senator Wetangula Moses Masika.
Madam Speaker, I want to thank Senator Milgo's committee for bringing this bill to the Senate, a bill that will have far-reaching positive consequences on our youths. Madam Speaker, I will be fairly brief. I support the bill in setting out clear definitions and provisions in the establishment and management of vocational training centers, and in centralizing standardization. Because, Madam Speaker, without standards in the country, we would soon have private entrepreneurs setting up vocational training centers, collecting money from citizens, and giving them very shoddy products. This standardization is also important because we want an equitable growth of our economy by tapping into the available human resource capacity in the country. Madam Speaker, I want to encourage in terms of what I find missing is that in creating these vocational training centers in virtually each county, should not be a process on confining Kenyans in their counties. I want to see a provision, Madam Speaker, where children from Kwale can be found in vocational training centers in Bungoma, children from Elgeyo Marakwet should be found in vocational training centers in Nairobi or Kiambu or Wajir, so that we build a united country where our children grow up knowing that there are other Kenyans elsewhere as well. If we are to limit, Madam Speaker, to intakes to these training centers from our local environment, then we will be killing the spirit of our nation. So I would want Madam Milgo at a committee stage to include a provision where you say in any of the institutions, at least a percentage, say 10, 15%, should come from elsewhere so that we create a good mix. After all, we are already creating a fund through the national government, like HELP, to continue helping, paying fees for these children. And if the government is able to underwrite the fees requirements, then the counties and all those involved can help children move from one part of the country to the other. That also makes it easy, Madam Speaker, for our young people who have trained in areas other than where they were born to pick jobs there and continue building a united and harmonized nation called Kenya. Madam Speaker, I also want to encourage that, we need a very serious awareness program in the counties. Awareness because, Madam Speaker, there is that stigma that the best children in the villages are those who have gone to university. Yet we know that this kind of training sometimes gives them better opportunities in life than even going to university. And that starting at vocational training centers, going on to polytechnics, you can end up in the university or get a degree in whatever process you want to choose. So we want to encourage, curriculum management in schools, career masters in schools, to teach our young people that in fact today, acquisition of technical skills is more important sometimes than having degree papers that have no bearing on technical skills. Madam Speaker, about 2-3 years ago, I was having a chat with President Thabo Mbeki, the retired president of South Africa, and he was telling me that South Africa is importing welders, fitters, and all those medium-level workers for their industries from Malaysia, from Sri Lanka, from Indonesia, because they don't have them. And Madam Speaker, when we train our young people well, from vocational training to technical institutes to higher polytechnics, and they get good skills, never mind that they may not be immediately available jobs in Kenya, we can export labor to countries that need them. For a long time, Madam Speaker, Poland was the #1 supplier of plumbers in the whole of Europe, because they had set up technical institutes that was training their plumbers. You go to anywhere in the UK, the plumber was a Polish. You go to Germany, the plumber was a Polish. You go everywhere, and they made the economy turn round. Now Poland is a major player in the European economy just because of this. Madam Speaker, I want to encourage that we train as many of our young people in technical skills as we can. Because if you go to developed economies like Germany, like Japan, for every engineer you have in a production line, he has more than 250 technicians behind him. For every senior engineer you have 300 technicians behind him. They are the ones who make the cars we drive. They are the ones who assemble the fridges we use in our houses. They are the ones who make the phones we use. It is not everybody with that high-end degree that makes the economy turn. And in fact, Madam Speaker, it is these middle-level technicians that you'll find running our dairy plants, you'll find them running our coffee mills, you'll find them running our tea factories, you'll find them running our plumbing works, you'll find them running every single bit of the economy. We have the top-end professionals to give them guidance, to design and tell them how to execute. Execution is left to them, and are the ones who will make our economy change. For this country, Madam Speaker, to move from what we have been singing on end, that we want to be like Malaysia, that was at the same level as us at independence, Singapore, Indonesia, India, it is because they embraced technical training. It is because they knew that you can have 100 engineers in one country, but if you have 1 million technicians, they will make a hell of a difference in the management of your economy. And this is very important, Madam Speaker, because if we want even the counties to compete, because the philosophy of devolution, Madam Speaker, and Senator Murkomen was involved in this, is never to endlessly send money from the center to the counties. The philosophy of devolution is that counties will grow to the extent where they will be donating money to the center. That is how we want this country to grow. When you go to a country like Australia, Madam Speaker, an economy like Western Australia subsidizes the national government because it's the mining capital of the world. You go to a country like the US, California doesn't need any money from Washington. New York doesn't need any money from Washington. They make enough money to subsidize poorer states within the federation. And that is the same as Germany. So we want to see, Madam Speaker, that in another 5-10 years, Nairobi should not be looking forward to receiving any money from the treasury. They should generate enough money to support Wajir, Elgeyo Marakwet, and others that are less endowed with resources to grow their economies. And how will they do this? Because you have people who turn the economy. Because you have people who will sit in offices on their computers and work. You have people who will collect revenue with honesty. All these are people who come from middle-level colleges. You don't need a PhD holder, Madam Speaker, to manage a payroll. You don't need a PhD holder, Madam Speaker, to manage a master role for paying land rates and land rents. You need technically trained persons who will sit on end and tell you if Nairobi optimally collected its revenue, like we know, Nairobi would be collecting close to 35-40 billion every year. How much do they collect? 8 billion. Where's the money, the rest of the money going? Into people's pockets. Because we don't have people to do the job. We have had cases, Madam Speaker, where, like we have said here before, every 5 years, we elect 47 ordinary Kenyans to be governors. At the end of 5 years, our number of billionaires is added by 47. because of poor management of our resources, because we don't have people at every level of our chain of management who look at things in a patriotic manner and make sure things are done properly. In fact, Madam Speaker, I want to encourage the Ministry of Education that going to the future, we must have a serious item in our curriculum on how to inculcate patriotism in our children. Patriotism to the extent that children don't look at ill-gotten wealth as a source of success, as a measure of success. Our children should look at hard work as a virtue of success. And that is what we should have. Because what we have today, Madam Speaker, is any crook who turns up in the village with a big car. Everybody thinks that this is the measure of success. Pardon? When you turn up in the village, Madam Speaker, and tell them that without you, Nairobi would not be having water, nobody cares. It's the size of your car that we want people to see that Senator Farhia alienda Nairobi kuwinda, and she has come back driving a V8. That is the measure of success. We must change this cycle, Madam Speaker, so that we have Kenyans who work and work hard to turn this country. So this bill is very important, Madam Speaker. The little bits and pieces that we need to improve, as other senators have said, is important. I saw, Madam Speaker, one clause that I would want to encourage Senator Milgo, that in proper drafting, you don't need something like that. Clause 21, you say there's established every county vocational education and training center, a board to be known as the Board of Governors. Then you're going to say the board shall not be a corporate entity. You don't need to say that. Once it is not said, because the law normally say it will enjoy corporate status. When you don't say it, in law, Murkomen will tell you that to specify one to exclude others. So you don't need a clause like that in the law. Yeah, I think you should remove it. I have seen where you are establishing the board. I thought you had not provided for the qualifications, but Senator Zani pointed out, I would want you to import the law that you are cross-referencing in the qualifications of the board members to be actually part of the law here, so that you avoid any ambiguity that what are the qualifications, because many of the people who are going to administer this law sometimes don't care to read the law. You tell them you appoint a board, and they'll appoint their cousins, their brothers, some illiterate, some not, some crooked, some not, and they come to run down our institutions. So you need a very clear criteria on who should be picked to sit on these public boards that are spending public resources. Equally important, and I want to laud this, Senator Milgo, that nobody should just walk into any part of this country and establish an institution without standardization. So they need to be checked, vetted, licensed, and adhere to the standards set by the National Council that is dealing with all these standards. Examinations that are conducted in these institutions are also standardized, and that is a very good idea, so that when you get a plumber from Wajir, his or her quality should not be any different from a plumber from Bomet or Kericho, because they are learning the same things, they are doing the same exams and getting the same qualifications, and they can work anywhere in this country. This is the only way that we can turn around our country. And by emphasizing this middle-level training, now this Senate is living to its billing as the protector of devolution. Because if the counties train good quality technicians, any technicians from Kericho working in Nairobi end up net importers of capital from Nairobi to Kericho, for Kericho to grow. So we'll be competing. Who has the best quality technicians? Who has the best quality institutions? Who has the best quality vocational training teachers? So that we can be able to grow our economy and stop lamenting and crying about which country overtook us at what time and where, so that we can be able to stand in our own right. Today, Madam Speaker, as we speak, as I come to an end, Everybody's talking about Rwanda overtaking everybody in this region. A country that has gone through so much difficulty. And yet, we have resources. We have some of the best human resource development in the entire developing world. But we have been overrode by corruption to the extent that things simply don't work. I want finally to urge the Ministry of Education in conjunction with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to market our technicians to the rest of the world. The only way we can be able, why should South Africa import fitters from Malaysia or from India or from Sri Lanka? When Kenya is here with top-level polytechnics churning out people who we do not market. Any Kenyan you find out there, Madam Speaker, and all of us travel a lot. You find a Kenyan in America, the last thing they want to know is where government resides. Because government doesn't help them, government doesn't care, government doesn't bother. They all go there on their own, struggle on their own, live on their own, and the only time they encounter with government is when they are struggling to renew their passports. Nothing else. We want, Madam Speaker, as we continuously talk of the diaspora bringing resources to this country, to be part of taking our diaspora out there so that they can be able to be part of the growth of this country. Senator Milgo, congratulations for this bill, and we'll support it through. Whatever amendments you bring, circulate to us, we work together, and then from there on, we want to see a proper collaboration between the national government and the county governments to make sure that this big dream works and works well for our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Wetangula. Senator Murgomen, Onesmus Kipchumba.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First, I want to thank the Education Committee led by Senator Milgo and previously led by Senator Langat, and I'm sure you are a member of that committee when you started this very important, you were the vice chair actually, when you started this very important bill. I know, Madam Speaker, this is an area that is very dear to you, both as an academician and an administrator in the academy, and later also as a minister in the same ministry. And Madam Speaker, this bill is very good because it's timely. It's time for us to think about our education. If we want to go far as a country, we must reorientate our education to the things that matter for our people. We know that for a long period of time, technical education has been ignored because we are pursuing university degrees, we're pursuing papers at the expense of quality of education itself. Madam Speaker, this is an area that I am extremely interested as a person who has been in the past a teacher in the university. And it's something that usually bothers me because even when I had a short stint teaching in a high school, I used to wonder why students that leave high school and they have studied agriculture are unable to compete with their parents, even for simple things like poultry or vegetables, and make some money from it, even if they are Form 4 dropouts. Why? That is the question we should always be asking ourselves. Why? How come after our children finish Form 4 and they don't get an opportunity even to further their education, there is no that small thing they take from the university, from high school itself, that they can be able to implement? It is because we've not put emphasis on technical education. And this bill that deals with vocational education and training is timely. Madam Chair, I wonder how the committee is going to receive our recommendations. I don't know how, this is a question I was just asking myself here, and I'm surprised 8 years down the line, this is the question I'm asking myself. Who reviews a bill that has been developed by a committee and it is in the committee stage? You know, the bill is for committee, it's come to the House for second reading, it's after committee processes, there will be an amendment, I think that's a practice that we need to relook, because then we are giving all these suggestions that we are giving now to the same Committee of Education to review its own bill for purpose of amendment. And of course, some of us are going to suggest certain amendments that should be included in this bill. The first thing I'd like to look at is the definition of what is a vocational education and training. This is not in the bill itself. Of course, the bill, you understand what Senator Wetangula was saying. To define it in one way is to exclude it in many other ways. So the bill itself says that vocational education and training means vocational and training program imparted to a trainee in a vocational education and training center. In other words, it says nothing about, about the vocational training itself. But there is something important about the definition, in my own opinion, and it starts with the Constitution. For it to be a level of education that is administered by county governments, I think it's important to locate its place in the Constitution. And the Constitution itself, in Schedule 4, Part 2, defines the functions of county governments to include, in the part, Part 9, which is pre-primary education. That is paragraph 9 of Part 2. It says pre-primary education, village polytechnics, homecraft centers, childcare facilities are functions of county governments. So for it to be a function of county government, we must locate the definition of a vocational institution to be part of what was anticipated to be a village polytechnic. So that in the definition itself, we should be able to find a definition that says vocational training includes, but not limited to, as defined by the Constitution, village polytechnics, and you can add other definitions that I have seen in other very important journals and reports. I have seen also definitions from articles and reports, including reports of World Economic Forum, that vocational training is defined as programs or courses that focus on the skills required for a particular job function or trade. It's also defined as hand-on, job-specific instructions and can lead to certification, diploma, or even a degree. Some of the examples of vocational training given, Madam Speaker, by various universities, colleges that offer vocational training here and abroad is that, courses like automobile repair, plumbing, culinary arts, graphic design, fashion design, welding, massage therapy, carpentry, cosmetology, which I think it deals with cosmetics, photography, website design, carpentry, electricians, and so forth and so forth. Those are some of the definitions given from various sites I've read, and colleges and universities all over the world that offer vocational training. But why the definition is also important is because, Madam Speaker, some of the regulatory requirements of this bill would expect county government to regulate to a certain extent or to license a college to a certain level. I was conversing with Senator Milgoy and asking her, so which one will be called the vocational training institution in my county and which one will be called the technical training institution? So its definition also must distinguish and must provide some level of graduating the licensing and the management process, because this is where we will now come back and say resources will follow functions. But for us to be able to say which resource will be managed by what level of government and which money will be given to what level of government, we need to define it well. So that then if it's a function that goes to county government, look at what the bill says about the responsibility of county government. It includes hiring of technicians, trainers, Madam Speaker, remunerating those trainers and ensuring that the trainers have quality education. Senator Langata said here, you go to one county, you have one being paid 6,000, in another one 10,000 to be an instructor, and another one 20,000. There must be uniform payment for these people, of course, taking into consideration allowances for unique areas, There must be uniform remuneration for the trainees. But for us to do that and for county government to be in charge, we must first to come and ask ourselves, up to what level is this training? Then we can now leave county government to do it, so that we don't create in law something that practically on the ground county government cannot finance. They're already struggling with ECDs. They're already struggling with recurrent expenditure. Even for them to hire agriculture extension officers becomes difficult. So we just don't need to give county government the function itself without asking ourselves, are they able to implement it? And if we think that there would be doubt in some of the counties to be able to implement this, then we create a window of that partnership between national and county government, including through conditional grants that are allowed by the Constitution for purpose of management of the county functions. That, I think, is a very important part of the law that we are going to make, so that it become as practical as possible. Madam Chair, I really like the Speaker. I like the fact that there is a clear role given for management of vocational education and training center, the structures that are required, the standards that are required, the people who are going to be employed to work there, the permits that you must receive, so that then we put the standard of vocational training in every county of the same level. But the question we also need to ask ourselves, this training will be up to which level? Is it going to offer, first of all, it is not in my interest, and I think it's not the interest of vocational trainers, that a lot of focus should go to what certification you are giving to that person, whether it's a certificate, a diploma, or a degree. Our focus, because we are distinguishing vocational training from the formal training we've been having through high school, university, and other colleges, this one should focus more on the skills. Because we are telling somebody, you have opened a salon, you understand a little bit of what you are doing there, but come here, get more skills. So that if that person has a certificate or not, he can be able to be the best salonist in whatever area they are. We are telling that person, you have some knowledge about how to massage. Our grandmothers, they didn't have any certification, but they knew who was the best masseur in the local area. If you are hurting, if you have a certain problem, this is Mama so and so will come and deal with your situation, because they understood, Madam Speaker, that it is important to focus on the skills more than the certificate. So the question we should ask ourselves is that up to what level are we going to focus on this? If we conclude that it's only up to certificate level, then it becomes also easy for us to distinguish the colleges that are going to be run by county government alone and the ones that are going to be run by the national government. But then why would you build an institution, a big structure, and then you say certificate alone? That is why...
Honorable Senator, there is a point of order from
okay, thank you, sir.
Would you like me to inform you? I can inform you. I think somewhere in the bill.
Of course, you are the person.
Thank you, Senator Murkomen. In the bill, it clearly stipulates that the level of entry will be at the craftsman level. And I think we have a benchmark through which we can then be able to do the necessary appraisal in terms of support and the financing and the budget provision. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
I appreciate the information from the former Cabinet Secretary responsible for vocational training, plus science and technology. So I have no doubt in my mind that it is competent enough to inform me. My only concern is not the entry, it's the exit. You are exiting at what level in the institution that is going to be managed by the county government. And if we go and curb it and say you can only get a certificate from there, then we will also waste resources, because if you have built a big structure, an institution that can still offer certificate, but there is room for it to offer a diploma, a degree, for the same people, then Senator Milgo and your committee, we need to look at how that graduated management or co-management with the participation of national government, or how the national government can be able to transfer its function in terms of training beyond the certificate level to a county government through an agreement that once you achieve certain level of the county government, those people can be admitted to these other courses within the same institution, but now being oversighted by relevant officers of national government. We need to find a way of marrying the two, then you don't waste the resources that come with establishing and putting there the structure that is for training. Maybe something else that just brings to the attention of the committee is that the bill needs a lot of cleaning. If you look at the bill, it says, for example, in section 23, it says, the board shall conduct its affairs in accordance with the provision of second schedule of Technical and Vocational Education and Training Act. And the second schedule is not there. There is actually no schedule, not even a second one. So the bill need to clear, because there's things missing in the bill that is being cross-referenced, but you don't have the schedule attached to this very important bill. Finally, Madam Speaker, because I don't want to say so many things about this bill, I like the fact that the bill has already quality and education training, and maybe something about quality education in this country that we must just put an eye on. It must not be left to the wishes and the ingenuity or lack of it of the cabinet secretary responsible for education at any given time, so that we are only talking about education is gone, the quality of education is high because the cabinet secretary is so and so, and quality of education is such and such because the cabinet secretary is so and so. It's important as a country that these institutions operate independently without political or ethnic consideration. Number two, we need to remove education sector from our bad manners of tribalism. And if we have to do that, we must allow the technocrats and the public servants to operate independent of our political interference. There was a time, Madam Speaker, that depending on who is the cabinet secretary, you determine who is the principal of a certain school, who is the board member of a certain school, who is, so you end up, you go to a certain institution, you find everybody is a Marakwet. Let me use an example that is less controversial, because I'm a Marakwet. You find everybody is a Marakwet. Then you ask why, they say, but the minister was a Marakwet, and we glorify it. This country glorifies those behaviors, because when I become the cabinet secretary of education, it becomes, okay. Please hold my time, because I have less than 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, is the distinguished Senator for Elgeyo Marakwet in order to set out lamentations on the floor of this House on, in fact, a policy perfected by his government? We have seen, Madam Speaker, members of boards appointed, 7 of them from one ethnic community, 5 appointed, 4 from one ethnic community. We have seen, Madam Speaker, in his backyard, a vice chancellor flashed out from a university because he's not from a certain community. And to his credit, at least he resisted that.
Senator Murkomen,
Madam
please,
Chair,
you have
first of all,
3 minutes.
First of all, Madam Chair, that's not a point of order, but be it as it may, let me say this. I have no government yet. Yeah, when I form my own government, Madam Chair, I will be held into account. I'll be held into account about the functions and the cabinet secretaries within my government. Number 2 is to continue insisting that we need to divorce. If you look at the fights that used to take place, and I don't know why Senator Wetangula is just mentioning Moi University, and he knows my position at that time when people are saying, thank you very much for that. It's not just about talking about Moi University. There was a time the fight in the University of Nairobi was about this tribe is in charge of this and this tribe is in charge. The same to Kenyatta University, the same to Maseno University, the same. All these universities have gone through these problems of ethnic profiling. And every time a new cabinet secretary comes, he wants to change the council, the board, the Senate, and everywhere to suit, particular tribal inclination. And it's Kenyans who encourage this behavior. Madam Chair, Kenyans, if you ask them, can you vote for so-and-so to become president of Kenya? they tell you, no, hata, let me say in Kiswahili, hata hakusaidia watu yake. He didn't help his people. But if you put your people everywhere, then everybody says, yo ni mtu mzuri, he's a good man. He put everybody who comes from his tribe in this and this particular place. That behavior should come to an end. We must be able to treat university institutions, colleges, training institutions in a professional manner, whereby any person who comes from anywhere, and I agree with Senator Wetangula, a vocational training college should be able to accommodate any student from any part of the country and train them in any county to get the skills they require. So that when we talk about bottom-up approach to economic growth, Madam Chair, we have the necessary skills. This is, by the way, in the Hustlers Manifesto. This is the key principle that we want to pursue. And the Deputy President, who was a former minister in the same ministry you succeeded, has always been a great champion for this level of education, vocational and training and technical and training institutions, because this is where we should go. So that, as I conclude, we do not get ranked like the way we are at the moment. The Global Human Capital Report of 2017 ranks us 78, below Cameroon, below countries like Slovenia, and all these other parts of the world. Imagine even Rwanda is ranked higher when it comes to training for purpose, their people for purpose of skills. The most important thing we must do as a nation is to invest in this area, even if we are to export human capital to other parts of the world who have these technical skills. Madam Speaker, I support and I believe the committee, please take it very seriously, our recommendations, clean the bill, even if you require the services of experts in technical area in our universities. Tap into that expertise, work with the ministry itself, clean this bill, and let's pass this bill expeditiously so that it becomes one of our achievements before this term, the 12th Parliament, comes to an end.
Thank you, Senator Murkomen. Senator Mogeni, Eric Okongo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for also giving me an opportunity to make my contribution to this very important and progressive bill. Madam Speaker, I first want to begin by congratulating my neighbor, Senator Dr. Milgo, the chair of the committee, and also former chair of that committee, my good neighbor, Senator Langat, for the good work that has gone into preparing this bill. And Madam Speaker, I served, I think for 2 years in the Committee of Education, and we were part of the brains behind the development of this bill, which I must say is very, very progressive and will be very useful to our counties. Madam Speaker, you know, if you read our Constitution, I think that is fourth schedule, part 2, one of the functions of the county government, and the words that were used are very specific, Madam Speaker. It says implementation. You know, when you're being told implementation, you have been given an obligation. It says part of the functions of county government is implementation of specific, sorry, I think I'm reading the wrong one. Yes, to implement pre-primary education, village polytechnics, home craft centers, and childcare facilities. But Madam Speaker, if you go to most of our counties, you don't see these centers. I've been to a number of counties and you don't see these centers. So it's a very good idea that the Committee of Education has thought it wise to create a legal framework that will govern the establishment and management of vocational education and the training centers in our counties. Because if you don't guide these counties, you will never see them fully taking up the functions that have been assigned to them under the Constitution. Madam Speaker, you had the debacle we had on what is happening in the county of Vihiga. So we, as protectors of devolution, we must step in to come with laws that must guide our counties in ensuring that they implement the functions that have been assigned to county governments under our constitution. Madam Speaker, in the last 10 years or so, this country has seen unplanned expansion of universities all over, in many counties, are very unplanned. Yes, as Senator Wetangula is saying, you walk in some towns and you will find students on some buildings where downstairs we have funny businesses, including bars, which is very unfortunate. Madam Speaker, some of us who went to pioneer universities, like University of Nairobi, we knew universities as centers of learning where we do serious business, where you don't just mix things anyhow. And there, I must confess that there are universities that have been set in the countryside with beautiful facilities. Even and a good example is Kisii University, which is former Kisii College, away from the town, with a field for students to engage in extracurricular activities and the likes. But then we have ignored our technical colleges for a long time, which I think, Madam Speaker, was a derailment on our own policy as a government. Because if you want to create employment, you want to spur growth of industries, you want to have entrepreneurs, you focus on vocational training. Madam Speaker, if you go to China, what we call cottage industries is being run by people who have technical knowledge. These furniture that you see people bring here is not being prepared, they're not being done by people who are PhD holders. These are guys who have the technical training, who run cottage industries, but they are controlling a huge market. Madam Speaker, there are a number of Kenyans here who have this mentality that the best furniture can only come from China. But that is really, really misleading, Madam Speaker. If you go to Kenya, our own prisons, you get the best furniture. We have it here. Madam Speaker, if you go to Mombasa Road, there is somebody who has run a business, and I passed there the other day, I was told it is now in the third generation of the family, Panessa. And if you want the best furniture, you will get it here. Incredible talent in craftsmanship. You get the best dining tables, you get the best staircases in Panessa. And Madam Speaker, you'll be shocked that even without this framework of licensing people to do trainings, Panessa trains youngsters. They do classes from 4 to 6 p.m. Whereby people are given an opportunity to improve their talent on craftsmanship, how you can make beautiful desks, staircases, and the likes. So we have talent in this country. All that we need, Madam Speaker, is to ensure that there is a framework in our counties that will ensure that there is focus from our counties on these technical training institutions. Even in my own county, Madam Speaker, we have a big institute called Ekerbogieta Institute. Big, huge. But you will be surprised that we are into 8 years of devolution, but there are no equipment that are better than what we have from business people in Nairobi. What you will get in Nairobi timber, Madam Speaker, is not found in Ekerbogieta Institute. But look at the budget that we give to our counties. My county is receiving 6.2 billion this financial year. But a business person in Nairobi, like Nairobi Timber, can have good equipment, good machines, more than the counties. So I like the obligation that has been placed on our counties that they must equip these institutions. Because for you to train people who can be released to the market to compete and release, furniture that can compete with other private business people, you must give them the best equipment. You don't tell people, Madam Speaker, to do the traditional way, where you give them some wood and a panga and you say, now you can make furniture. No, chisel. You need to give them, if they are taken to these private enterprises in Nairobi, you will see the kind of equipment that we have. So I must thank the committee for having picked that one up, and I hope that once this bill is enacted and it becomes law, then our counties will do a serious investment in purchasing equipment that will ensure that the kind of training our youth will receive from these institutes will be able to go to the market and compete. And then we need to have our priorities right, Madam Speaker. You know, in this current financial year, just to understand the priorities of our MCS, in my budget, Madam Speaker, there is an hospital that is being allocated 1.5 billion to improve the infrastructure. And then a toilet, I don't know what kind of toilet is that. A public toilet, Madam Speaker, is being budgeted for 8.5 million shillings. Just imagine. That's what our MCAs are doing. You give a toilet 8.5 million, an hospital to improve the infrastructure, 1.5 million. It is sad. It is sad, Madam Speaker. I wish that that money can be put, for example, in buying some equipment, X-ray machines in our hospitals. I mean, if you ask people in homes, 8.5 million is a full-fledged house. You know? So we really must continue being the champions of devolution. Once this law is passed, the beauty is that counties will now be forced to ensure that they budget for money to implement what is contained in this budget. And talking about talent, Madam Speaker, there is a friend of mine in a market in Nyamira, in Kijauri, called Reuben Omoyo, a motorcyclist rider, who got an accident in 2019, Madam Speaker. He used to use a motorcycle, and he's been unable to walk. But, Madam Speaker, from his own garage, Madam Speaker, he has modified his motorcycle, changed it from a two-wheeled machine to a three-wheeled machine, and now he can move around in the county just without any training. That is the kind of talent that we have in this country that we want to improve by ensuring that we lay a lot of emphasis on our vocational training institutes. In terms of management, I want to agree with the senators who have spoken before me that we need to put standards. You know, we need to put standards. And I want to persuade the committee. I don't like what is in clause 21. You know, we are used so much with the council. When you mention the board of governors, it's like you are talking about council of governors, COG. Why can't we call it board of management? So I want to ask the committee to consider an amendment to Article 21. Instead of saying board of governors, you call it board of management. And then these appointments should be merit-based, because we don't want cronyism. If you give these powers to CEC, it will just be directed by the governor to pick the cronies of governor. But let's have a process that is merit-based. We have so many court decisions now that lay emphasis on public participation and merit-based approach on appointing people to board of management. So I hope that the committee can consider this amendment to Article 21, one, to delete the word governors, board of governors with board of management, and then insist on merit-based appointment. Now on clause 6, I've already mentioned the need. Maybe we need to really emphasize that county governments will ensure that all vocational training institutes have modern machines that will assist in the training of our youths. Because we don't want to leave it to be an open check system. Governors will never give priority to such like things if there are no opportunities to be converted into billionaires, as Senator Wetangula says. And then, Madam Speaker, on the issue of accreditation of the trainers, I don't know whether it will be a good idea to bring the Teacher Service Commission, because I don't know what will be the qualification of the people who will be doing the training in these vocational training institutes. I thought it would be wise if in clause 7 we say that these people should be accredited with the Teacher Service Commission, the way we have done with the ECD, so that we don't get even Dick and Harry coming in and saying, I'm a trainer. You know, these things can happen. If you don't provide proper standards in our legislation, you are opening it up for abuse. So I hope that the committee will give this obligation to
Senator, I see an intervention from the chair of the committee, Senator Milgo.
Okay, thank you very much. In terms of qualification of late vocational education and training, this is domiciled at Public Service Commission. And in this case, we have got Kenya National Qualifications Authority that looks at standardization and qualification. Point of information.
Yes, that was.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
because I think if I sat in the mediation committee that was looking to the ECD bill, and we had a long debate on this, and eventually we said the best body that can be entrusted with looking at standards of anybody who is providing training on education matters is Teacher Service Commission. So I really hope that, Public Service Commission does not have the proper expertise. So I hope, even capacity, as I'm being informed by my neighbor here. So I hope that the committee will reconsider that matter. The other thing I wanted to say, Madam Speaker, is that I wish our youths can go to the internet and look at the global market now in terms of people who want to migrate from this country. Nobody's looking for people with white-collar training, lawyers, you know, I don't know, people with Bachelor of Arts. They are looking for, or as I'm being told, PhD holders. That's not the priority for people who want to migrate to the. You will earn the same money. If it's $10 per hour, what the lawyer is earning and what the plumber is earning is the same. So I want to encourage our youths to go to the website and see the opportunities, massive opportunities that are there for them to migrate to the developed countries out there. So once they attain this training, they have this diploma, they don't need to look at the local market. There is a lot of opportunities out there, Australia, in Europe, all over. The people who run this kind of industry in the US are Mexicans. The Americans does not have enough plumbers, so the Mexicans keep moving to America to assist in doing plumbing jobs. Somebody says if you close that border from Mexico to America, there will be no plumbers to work on houses in America. So with those remarks, Madam Speaker, I support this bill and hope that going forward, the committee will be able to look at some of the observations that have been made by these senators. But really, it's a very good bill. It's a game changer. And I hope that once it is in place, we will attract more of our youths to go to these vocational training institutes so that we create more job opportunities for our young people. I support, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. And maybe for the information of the chair, because what was pointed out is real, but there's been serious fight over whether the technical training sector should be under TSC. It is one that they may need to approach accredited technical and vocational peers, at the same time, the education peers. You need to talk to both of them at the same time. I was in that committee, and I know historically, because it happened also when I was Minister for Science and Technology, there's been a fight not to allow the TVET line to be under TSC. Reasons are varied, but we may need to relook at that to see if that would help. That's just for information for the chair and the committee. Thank you, Senator Mogeni. Senator Nyamunga Rose Ogendo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. This is one bill that I think I've been waiting for a very long time. The reason why I've been looking for this bill is because a lot of the disservice that we have done to our own country. For a long time, we have believed as a people or as a nation that somebody must get a degree for them to be known to have gone to school or to be educated. We have spent a lot of money as Kenya as Kenyans, more so in the 80s and the 70s. I mean, the 80s and the 90s, and I think up to now, myself included, believing that we must educate our children outside this country because we did not believe in ourselves. And that has taken a lot of money drained from this country, going out to other countries and supporting other economies. Why, instead of supporting our own colleges and our own system so that our children may be educated in this country? Not every child is brilliant. And the fact that one child may understand something better than the other or quicker than the other does not make that child better. But in our minds, we believe that there are children who are more brilliant than others because others are in the habit of or are capable of understanding things quickly. And those who are slow, we have taken them to be maybe stupid, if I may use that word. But I don't think our children are stupid. It is just a matter at the level at which our children understand issues. So because of that, we have laid a lot of emphasis on white-collar jobs, on education, that even if a child goes to the university to learn something that will not be of so much value to them or beneficial to this country, but we still insist that our children must go to universities, they must have white-collar jobs, even when they come back and do nothing. Imagine if in each county, Madam Speaker, can I be protected?
Honorable Senators, please consult in low tones. So
Madam Speaker, when I don't understand how Senator Sherargera has crossed across, and while he was contributing to this bill, all of us were very silent and listening to his very good and educative contribution. Away from that, Madam Speaker, I want to say that we have done a lot of disservice to this country by not believing in ourselves. Imagine if in each county we had a vocational polytechnic and a polytechnic in each and every county, properly established with proper standards that cuts across, as most of mentioned that we must, the colleges must be established in a uniform way, the standards must be the same, that anybody qualified in Kisumu should have the same standards with any other person qualified in any other part of this country. So that we don't think that if you are coming from Kisumu, yes, you are more qualified than somebody may be coming from Turkana. But if we have the same standards and apply it across board, it will mean that we will believe in our own colleges, the TVET colleges, because they are very critical. Madam Speaker, I don't think we should be talking about industrialization. And we want to talk about food security. And we want to talk about housing. Yet, we don't develop our own people to help us develop the 3 or the 4 categories. Right now, we have, the government has 4 agendas. The 3 of them I've already mentioned, without qualifying our own children. I have in my own village, Ahero Village Polytechnic. There are so many students who will never step in Ahero, even if they have a D. But having a D does not mean that they cannot improve from a D to a certificate, to a diploma, higher diploma, and continue to whatever level that they would want to reach. So if Ahero or Boya, technical or TVET, is properly established with qualified staff, good standards, I believe that a lot of money that our parents are spending taking our children away from home, because boarding fees is very high and not reachable to many parents. For the moment we have these TVETs and these vocational training colleges in our villages or in our counties, it will cut cost, meaning that more people will be qualified. We had an opportunity to be in Dubai, and Madam Speaker, you were there. What we discovered is that even if we got our students from here to go and work in Dubai or any other country outside this country, our qualifications from technical colleges is not up to standard. They will still have to look for another college to educate our students who are already educated. Just like if we educate our doctors and we educate our teachers, they may not be able to compete with other nations. But if we would work on our standards, and during that time, we also met a gentleman, and this gentleman runs some colleges known as Kenema. This Kenema is entrusted with helping our students who are already trained in our polytechnics and our TVETs to bring them to a level that is acceptable in other countries. Senator Wetangula, I think, mentioned that we should not now be thinking of taking our children to go and do the technical colleges out there, because in Kenya itself, we cannot even compare ourselves with Uganda. We cannot even compare ourselves with Rwanda, because those 2 countries, they have developed their own TVET colleges, and their diplomas and technical courses are much better than ours. Every time I step in my home in the village, I would definitely need a plumber, or I may need a mason, I may need an electrician. There's no day I will go over the weekend and not miss to look for one of them. But in my village, I would only be looking for 3 people. There's only 1 plumber, maybe 1 electrician, and maybe 1 mason. Because most of our students don't want to be trained. They think that is not good enough for them. Yet, these 3 people I've mentioned, they have homes, they run them, they have permanent houses, their children are going to school, but maybe they didn't have their degree. And true, they don't have degree courses, but they have the technical ones, and it is helping them. So as a nation, we should bring ourselves at a level that we accept that we can move, and any student who may not get an A or a B can start from wherever they are with a D or a C minus and move forward and still achieve their goals. I think we should stop stereotyping, and I think we should stop putting too much emphasis on white-collar jobs, because right now it is really taking us nowhere. Madam Speaker, I want to say that the issue of culture. In Kenya, we are very rich in culture. In our TVETs or technical colleges, we can develop even the instruments for culture, the culture itself, music itself, talent. We have our children with great talents that may not be accommodated at the university levels, but in our TVETs and in our polytechnics and in our what you call technical colleges, we should be able to bring everybody on board. The type of education that we have now, Madam Speaker, is whereby there is graduation. After class 8, standard 8, you graduate to Form 1. And after Form 1, these children should be able to graduate so that you don't stop at Form 4. If all of us are going to stop at Form 4, then we need to graduate at least to some technical college or some diploma or some technical, not diploma or higher diploma. That way, I think we will have helped our system, we will have helped our intellectual level of upgrading our students, so we don't stop at class 8 or we don't stop at Form 4. Because if we stop there, somebody who has just done Form 4 or Standard 8, they are almost the same. But if you give them a technical training or upgrade them, you give them something, you give them some work to do, you give them some income. There are many people looking for our young people to work. And I've already mentioned, and many other senators have also mentioned, many countries are looking for technically trained people. But unless we come back and go to the basics to make sure that we show by example that even our own children and our own relatives can go to these technical colleges or these village polytechnics or TVETs, that is the only way. We must lay emphasis and we must make sure that we make them believe, yes, that these technical colleges are good for us. We should develop them. We should standardize them. We should make sure that they are properly run and properly financed. So, because you can also have them, but they are not financed. You can also have them, but not properly, the infrastructure may not be really up to standard. Because I've given as an example of my own. If you go to a Hero or Boya, it is known as Boya, looking at it, it's not properly. The infrastructure is really not good. But right now, the local people have seen the benefit that if I can't afford a boarding school or a boarding college, I should be able to take my child to the next door, to next door here, and from there they have seen results. So let us believe in ourselves, let us believe in our country. And I really want to support this bill because it is good. A few amendments here and there will make it much better, and we want to give Kenyans a very good bill that will stand the test of time and that will produce a good education and a good development for the benefit of this country. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Nyamunga, Senator Jeriot, Aaron Kipkurui.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this chance. Madam Speaker, I want to congratulate the Committee of Education for this very progressive bill. This is one upon whose completion, Senate will definitely hang it in our collection book of bills that we have passed in this House, Madam Speaker, that will, if properly implemented, because passage of bills and implementation are two different and distinct things, Madam Speaker. But let us deal with first things first. Let us discuss it, pass it, then, of course, the responsibility of ensuring that it is properly implemented, much as it lies with the executive, we shall be here also, God willing, Madam Speaker, to oversight and ensure that the dream of the crafters of this bill is realized in ensuring that we have equipped our young people, Madam Speaker, with the requisite skills to be able to face life and make their contribution into making this country, Madam Speaker, the republic that we all dream of. Therefore, Madam Speaker, I do congratulate the team that has worked on, led by Senator Dr. Alice Milgo and her committee for this very progressive bill. Madam Speaker, for many times and seasons, we have spoken about the need for us as a country to rethink, reevaluate, and perhaps pause for a moment and to imagine the kind of education system that we are using in this country, whether it is helping us, whether it is giving us the intended results, or whether we had reached a point, as many have said, because I've taken time to listen to the contribution of many of our colleagues, that indeed we missed a point somewhere when we thought that the alpha and the omega of an educated population is just a society made up of graduates alone. Little did we know that after you return and you've come back with your degree certificate, and if you're fortunate to get a job, that you'll still need a plumber, you'll need a craftsman, you will need a tailor, you will need a mason. Many of us never sat for a moment to imagine and think that those people will be in such high demand that it will get to a point that their skills actually will end up being more expensive or marketable, if I may use such a language, Madam Speaker, than those who have filled up degrees in their academic, stars and happy celebrating, saying, I have this degree from such and such a university, but no job to show. Madam Speaker, this is such a progressive bill because of 3 or 4 factors that I have picked out from my quick reading of this particular bill, which I want to quickly enumerate and perhaps share 1 or 2 thoughts about things which I think the committee and the rest of us all should consider when it comes to amendments that are proposed in this particular bill, just to make it better and ensure that it serves the purpose for which it was intended. The first and most important aspect about this bill is in part 2, Madam Speaker, where it speaks to the uniformity of these institutions. That you can see an intention, a desire by the crafters of this bill to ensure that much as we are giving the free rein and the license to our various county governments to set up these tertiary institutions, we are ensuring that there will be uniformity, as such that you will not find a particular county, this is what is considered what you consider to be a TVET institution. Madam Speaker, because we have learned from what happened in the liberalization of universities, in the liberalization even of high school education, Madam Speaker. You'll recall that there was a time that the Ministry of Education had tried to expand the presence of education centers in this republic, has licensed so many schools that were not even meeting the basic requirements of what is supposed to be at school. If you walked in this CBD, there were high schools even in this city at one particular time, where on first floor, you find that it is a hotel selling chips and sausages, second floor is a disco, and on third floor is a high school. This is the kind of scenario that part 2 of this particular bill is avoiding, where you have uniformity of institutions, and you ensure that we inform and we guide the standards, so that across all our 47 counties, Madam Speaker, when you set up an institution, it must pass certain checks. And I hope, Madam Speaker, as a House of Parliament, we will perhaps get to a point where one day, in just trying to see how overall we can develop the tools that are necessary for us to perform our work as an institution of oversight, ensure that we set up an oversight team that is separate even from us as members of Parliament alone. Because as it is right now, it just depends on our interaction with members of the public and the things that we hear across the board. We should be able to have an oversight unit within the institution that points out, there are so many legislations that we have passed on standards of various things to do with the environment, to do with education, to do with the health sector. Of course, as a human being, you cannot remember all of them. But if you are to have an oversight unit that will always point out to us and remind us as an institution that being the institution that is charged with the mandate and the responsibility of ensuring that certain standards are met in the various sectors of our economy, we will be able to point out, Madam Speaker, and say this and this hasn't been met. That is why this part 2 is extremely important, Madam Speaker, and I appreciate that particular inclusion. In part 3, Madam Speaker, is where I foresee a challenge, because I've been a member of Budget and Finance Committee, Madam Speaker. In fact, for the last 2 session of allocations, that 2 billion shillings, in fact it was always a standard figure of 2 billion Kenya shillings, has been set aside for vocational training and colleges. Actually, we had reversed the plan of things, because first we provided the funds without being specific, and therefore when this money went to the various county governments, and you know it was divided to, you'll find another county gets 40 million, another one 170. Therefore governors will pick one or two shady things and just be creative about it. They'll pack young people in a particular tertiary institution for 1 week, pay suppliers, and then it will be considered that is vocational education and training. Yet that wasn't the intention. This bill now provides a proper legal framework of how counties are going to partner with this institution to ensure that we provide the requisite skills for our young people, Madam Speaker. But herein comes a challenge. Where is the money to set up these institutions, Madam Speaker? You all come from 47 county government colleagues, senators, and you know that if you speak to your members of the county assemblies, if you speak to your governors, you do realize the challenge and the strain that exists in terms of trying to use the kind of funds, the amount of funds that you are devolving, and match it. Increasingly, Madam Speaker, I see a challenge where as Senate, because of the challenges of Article 114 on money bills, we are continuing to lump up counties with various responsibilities, but without prescribing where this funding to set up most of these institutions are going to come from. And this is a challenge which as a House we must think and find a way of creatively advising, setting even a provision that the cabinet secretary say for a particular, even for treasury, will gazette regulations on how you're going to raise funds to fund these tertiary institutions. Because how other countries have done it, Madam Speaker, is that various corporations and institutions are charged at least a set amount from the corporation tax that they pay. Part of it is set aside for training, because they understand if you do not continually train people, it will get to a particular time where even those very institutions, part of their succession planning, they will not be able to secure enough technicians and enough skilled people to perform these particular responsibilities. Therefore, I foresee a challenge for us as Senate, and we must tax our brains and think critically. How is it that as we continue to give, yet we do understand how budgeting is done, and we understand how the country is being run at this particular time, or even for the last 8 years. The National Assembly do not seem to appreciate that counties are part and parcel of the Republic of Kenya, and a thriving county does not in any way diminish your standing and stature as a member of parliament. I have never understood. That is one thing that I struggle with members of National Assembly every time that I engage them. They'll tell you they can't distinguish between a governor and a county government. It is possible to dislike a governor because of their bad practices, but still love your county, but still wish the best for your county government. You will find that when such a progressive bills get to the National Assembly, despite the fact that they have the powers now to even make addition, and I know once if they were to do that, we will quickly agree with that amendment to ensure that these institutions are properly funded, chances are they will not do it. Because they imagine, oh, this is just additional funds that we are sending to the counties. Every time some of these members of National Assembly think about counties, they think about the governor instead of the people of that particular county. We must create a mechanism of how we will fund these institutions so that they do not become like many of these tertiary institutions that are lying idle. I appreciate what, for example, this administration has done with the TVETs. Of course, it's a useful and a step in the right direction, but more still needs to be done. Because you know, Madam Speaker, I was speaking once to a colleague of mine who's in the National Assembly, and I found them arguing. Both of them come from my county. And one of them was telling the other that I cannot accept the machines that have been sent to my TVET center. Because I asked them, what's the challenge? They said, oh, can you imagine they have sent baking equipment? So people will be comparing that while you took mechanical fixing training equipments to your constituency, that I'm asking my people to be bakers and salonists. It's also part of culture change and things that we need to teach our people, because people need to appreciate. The point that it sends, Madam Speaker, or the thing that we learn from such experiences is that there is need to involve all stakeholders so that people appreciate. Indigenous knowledge, Madam Speaker, can never be replicated elsewhere. You cannot sit comfortably in Nairobi in your well air-conditioned offices and imagine you know better than the people that work, say, in Makueni. They will tell you what we think we need in our particular vocational education training centers are training to help us in do the following because they have identified either masonry or if there are certain agricultural products they are involved in coffee, they'll tell you we need people to learn how to repair coffee machines. Because you'll be shocked that in many of our factories, even a county like Kericho where I come from, we have many tea factories, but each time they break down, you'll find that we have to send all engineers all the way from India, where these machines were manufactured. And most of those people are actually graduates of tertiary institutions like this one, Madam Speaker. These are the kind of things that you're talking about of what needs to be done. If there's a country in the world that have grasped this concept and we need to learn from them, then it is Germany. More than 50%, 51% actually to be specific, of their skilled laborers are graduates from these tertiary institutions. They call it the vets. And year on year, they ensure that these institutions are properly funded, that they receive the necessary support from the various corporations, and they continue to churn out technicians, people who are properly skilled, and they can be received by the various corporations and institutions because of how important a role they play in setting up the economy of that country. The reason that economy is a powerhouse is because of these people. It's not white-collar jobs. That's why they have hardly 40 to 45% only of white-collar trainees, but they focus more than half of their training in these particular people. I do hope that when this bill passes, Madam Speaker, we shall also continually fund and ensure that these institutions receive the requisite support. You do recall, Madam Speaker, if you are a follower of international politics, that at the height of his fight with China, President Trump tried to force the various corporations that American corporations that do business with China, that they should manufacture locally. But the corporations told him, Mr. President, while we appreciate and we will wish to give this job to local Americans in this country to manufacture for us things like phones and computers, tell us where we'll find those skilled technicians and in the volume that is needed. Because they might be available, but not to the volume that will be expected for the economies of scale, so that one corporation, say like IBM, where you can get 1 million people, yet these things are readily available in countries like China and Taiwan. I believe most of these people, and I know for a fact, these are not university graduates. These are technicians who've come from such institutions in those regions, that you have them in such an abundance that many institutions will even come and set up, will pitch tent here in our republic because they know they can easily get skilled labor. Actually, Madam Speaker, this is one of the parameters that each and every time people talk about an enabling investment climate, skilled labor is one of the parameters that people look out for. They just want to know that despite the fact that you can give them a good taxation, available power, they want to know, do you have people that can actually do this job and do it right? This is the example that you are learning, Madam Speaker. Part 4 of this bill, Madam Speaker, speak to the issue of curriculum. This is also extremely important because we do not want to allow every Tom, Dick, and Harry to just move around and say, oh, I've created a curriculum for how to, say, be a mason or do this or the other. Then these institutions will lack meaning. There is importance and there is wisdom, and I agree with the decision of the committee for curriculum to also still be standardized. Let us trust the age-old institutions like Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development to still be the institutions that are charged with the mandate of ensuring that they develop curriculum for these institutions. Of course, I'm sure they will infuse it with the local knowledge that I was talking about and partner with the local technicians who will generate new knowledge. You know, Madam Speaker, there's a feeling, and sometimes a very wrong one, in this country that sometimes when something stays for too long, that you somehow need to fix it either way. It is a kind of thinking that led people to go to a very good institution that we used to have here called the Kenya Polytechnic. An institution that used to survive, to provide very skilled technicians for the various institutions in this country. Companies like East African Breweries used to pitch up tent there, and every year they had a standing interest, knowing that in any class, any graduating class with a diploma, the top 10 students will pick them and put them straight in the labor market, because they knew how well those people. Somebody sat at Jogo House and said, "Apana, they're not doing a good job. Let us convert it into a university." It's now teaching business management, marketing, surely. So we need to protect institutions like Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development. Because, Madam Speaker, you would know that actually the more an institution ages, the better refined they become in the work that is doing. Utalii College is one such example. If you travel to the Middle East, and many of our colleagues do travel most of the time, the chances that any Kenyan you'll meet managing a hotel was trained at Utalii is almost 90%, including even others who come from different parts of the world to come and just study this world-class institution. Yet you'll find people trying to say, "Oh, I think it has been bypassed by time. We need to change it, convert it to a university," like we did with the rest of the institutions. We must protect this institution that produce such people. And how do you protect it? By ensuring that that curriculum is standardized so that it is developed, and anytime there is new knowledge that is coming, it is made to be part and parcel of that particular training. For this one, the part 4 of the bill, I concur and agree with the proposal that is being made by the committee. Finally, Madam Speaker, is the issue of this board that they have created. It's an important one, Madam Speaker. I only wish they had gone further than the traditional. Also, Madam Speaker, one of the things that we need to do as Parliament, especially we that are lawmakers, is to move away from this standardized way of drafting our laws. That it is known that any time when you're creating a board, we have the cliche qualifications that are set out. Must be a holder of a degree, CG, blah, blah, blah. I mean, let's be creators of new knowledge also. Let us specify and think better and say, have a representation, say, from religious groups, have a representation, say, I'm sure, say, a place like the county. Let me use Kericho, for example. I would have, it's because it's a county that I know it better, Senator Faki. I wanted to say, if I was to create such a board, you'll give a position, say, to the you'll allow the tea factories, which are in such an abundance, to have a nominee in that particular board, because they are the ones who know the kind of skill that they need, and they'll ensure that these institutions are training young people who can repair even these modern tea plucking machines that people are fighting, instead of embracing and realizing that this is part of the change that we need. Therefore, Madam Speaker, on that particular proposal, I still think we can do something better with it in terms of the composition of that particular board, and specify who are the...
Honorable Senators, I just want to plead with you. If you don't need to take the 20 minutes, you can always donate, because we have members who've been sitting here the whole afternoon with an intention of making a contribution to this bill. So I think we should be fair in that direction. Senator Kilonzo Jr. Mutula Jr.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I hope I can take a shorter period. Now that most senators have spoken to the bill and the contents of the bill, I think I'll skip that. Let me start by saying that I'm not sure, but I'm surprised that we are dealing with this now. We should have done it a little earlier. This is so urgent and so important that I'm tempted to say this is the solution to the so-called bottom-up approach and the contraption that I'm so against that I see with some political party. This is actually the solution of training young people to get skills. And I'm going to urge Senator Milgo, as I congratulate you for this bill, to visit an institution in Boni constituency called Wamboli Technical Institute. I've been there, and I'm not quite sure whether the equipment I saw in that college is standard in the whole country, because it should be. Very modern equipment. They are making radios. They are making antennas. The nanotechnology is in Mboni Technical Institute. So I would like the committee, as we debate on this bill, to confirm, because when it bothered me when Senator Cheriot said they got a bakery, because that's not what they are doing in Mboni. They are doing modern technology. And as I said, they're building radios and battery cells, and that should be the standard all over the country, so that we can train people to do some of these things. Senator Cheriot is right, and I'm not sure he was in our team when we went to Germany, where we found young people, and they are not insisting. Their education is two-tier. You go to class, but you go to a technical institute. So here is a group of senators. We walked into an institution where we found young people fixing a Bosch engine, 18-year-olds. No wonder the German machines are the best in the world, because these young people were fixing this. We went to another technical institute, and they were doing what I'm calling the nanotechnology, where your aerial is stuck to your car, to the extent that, for example, if this road that we are doing on the expressway, if you need to make a payment, the payment will be on your windscreen, so that every time you cross the road, you don't need the toll stations that I've seen being demolished in Gilgil, that were just avenues for collecting money from poor Kenyans. Wouldn't it be nice, Dr. Milgo, that out of these technical institutes, you can have a pool of painters, that you can have a pool of carpenters, that you can have a pool of plumbers? I can tell you that we are getting our plumbers and carpenters from Machakos, because there are none in Makueni. It's not possible. So I think the ultimate goal of training these people is to find a pool of good painters and good trainers and good plumbers who can be used all over the country. Can I shock you that in my forays together with the speaker in Dubai, we discovered that we have only 23,000 Kenyans in UAE total, majority of whom are house helps. Now, we are famous in UAE for exporting house helps. It's not a bad thing, but it doesn't make sense at all to me that out of a country of so many young people, we are only exporting house helps. It's ridiculous. A young man walked into my office today, is doing a bureau to do house helps in Saudi Arabia. I mean, that's the best we can do for the country. It's a tragedy. The ambassador then shared with me a long list of workers required in Dubai, about 1,000, of all cadres of technical skills that are required in Dubai, including something that we don't think is important called washing of planes. Just washing planes in Dubai. Yet, it is such a well-paying job that half of the people who are sitting on desks in Nairobi are not paid as much as the people who are washing planes in DXB, we call it Dubai International Airport. So what you're doing is important, but we must create a pool so that then when all these organizations are looking for workers, trained, skilled workers, we can have them. There's no better place that you will find technology of people doing manual and skilled labor than UAE. I was privileged when I was Senator Cheriot. This good gentleman introduced me to a young man who left the country and went to Japan as an architect. He's now married to a Japanese, he speaks fluent Japanese, and is now in charge of disaster management insofar as buildings are concerned in Japan that are earthquake compliant, are Kenyan. It's unbelievable. And it's possible. This is one of those methods where we can actually give hope. And our education has failed because we have trained people to think that when you get a degree, you must get a job. As opposed to you can have a skill and you can get a job and work anywhere in the world.
So this is a solution to some of the problems you're having with the youth. As somebody was complaining recently, and one of our colleagues, that we have so many architects, and these architects don't have jobs. There are places where they are expanding left, right, and center, and I think this forms a solution. Can I mention something that I have found very, very interesting, that even we, the ones in the legal profession, are hoping that we can train our lawyers. In Part 3 and Clause 3, every person, you have included something very important in Part C, promotion of innovation, technology transfer, and entrepreneurial culture. Now, that is what is missing in our profession. All our professions. We are training lawyers, but we never train them to be entrepreneurs. We are training bankers, we don't train them to be entrepreneurs. We are bringing Chinese here to build a standard gauge railway. There's no technology transfer. When something breaks down, we still have to look for people all the way from Beijing to come and do very simple menial jobs like tightening screws and tightening bolts. No technology transfer. Now, this nice road that we are having, that I'm admiring every other time I'm driving to Makueni, I can tell you that the technology for doing that road will not be transferred to Kenyans. And it's a mistake. When we visited Thwake, we bothered to show the head of state a very interesting bridge drawn across Earth River. Very simple bridge, but it's carrying heavy load of concrete and stones. Yet ordinarily, if that bridge was to be given to the Kenyan engineer to do across Thwake River or Earth River, that we have been unable to do since 1963, it will cost 1 billion shillings. The top is wooden. That skill can be found through this. This is the most admirable thing in your bill, technology transfer. Because that's what we need to do to our young people. So that across our rivers, all over the country, we can have a bridge I saw in Thwake, which I am sure didn't cost much. I am concerned in Clause 4 about examination standards. This is what is ailing the Kenyan education system. Everything is about examination. So can we walk away from examination standards and find something else that is more useful? As I complete, I want to say, and I would like to urge you to visit that college that is in Mboni constituency and propose that we have the same standards all over the country. In Konza Techno City, they are going to bring a university called KAIST, which is going to teach innovation, which is part and parcel of what you want to do here. We must, in doing vocational education, we must also include innovation. You've mentioned it here, but let's give it a little more prominence, that we are not just teaching people to do skills, we are teaching people to be innovative. I was given a title, the Konza Innovation Champion, because I brought young people to do very simple innovations. And a young man from Dandora, sponsored by Senator Sakaja, beat class 8 students, and he had never seen a laptop in his life. But when they were given an opportunity to do innovation, do a compass, do a small thermometer on a computer, this young boy from Dandora slums was able to beat a lot of these students. And therefore, I think that one of the things you can do is include innovation in this. Congratulations, Senator Dr. Alice Milgo, for this very, 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 very important bill. It's a solution. I hope that if I was to sit in Makueni, this is one of those things that I would put as emphasis number one, because this is the solution. This is it. This is the answer to the cry by young people that we are not including them and we are not training them. Because it's not a contradiction to have a young man with a degree in engineering and he has another skill. That's what I saw in Germany, what Senator Cheriot is referring to. You have a degree in business management, but you also have another skill through the vocational training I support. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, for even donating a few minutes to your colleagues. Honorable Senators, I don't think it would be wrong for us to reduce the time so that we accommodate, unless somebody is really against that. If you are not, we will reduce to 10 minutes so that we accommodate our colleagues who've been sitting here the whole time. Senator Mwinyi Haji Mohamed, Senator from Mombasa.
Asante Bispika kwa kunipa fursa hii kuchangia mswada wa elimu ya mafunzo ya kiufundi. Bispika, kwanza ningependa kumpongeza Senator Dr. Milgo pamoja na kamati nzima ya elimu ya Senate kwa mswada huu ambao kwa kusema ukweli ni mswada ambao utasaidia pakubwa vijana katika nchi yetu ya Kenya na vile vile wale ambao wameweza kuhitimu masomo mbalimbali lakini hawana elimu ya kiufundi. Mheshimiwa Spika, ufundi kama useremala, uwashi yani ujenzi na mengineyo vinahitajika pakubwa ili kusaidia taifa hili kusonga mbele katika kuendelea duniani. Mheshimiwa Spika, tukiangalia masomo ya kiufundi yalianza siku nyingi, lakini kwa kuwa hakuna mfumo wa kuweza kuyabeba, umekuwa ni vitu vinafanyika kibahati nasibu. Kwa mfano, Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi nilipoingia form 1 miaka mingi iliyopita, nilikuwa nafanya somo la useremala, carpentry na vile vile metal work, ufundi wa kujenga vitu kama vile majiko na vyombo vingine vya kutumika. Kwa Mheshimiwa Spika, sio jambo la ajabu kufanya masomo ya kiufundi, ni jambo ambalo limekuwa, na hata mimi baadaye ufundi ule unaweza kunisaidia kuweza kufanya kazi ndogo ndogo katika nyumba yangu wakati niko nyumbani. Kwa Mheshimiwa Spika, masomo ya kiufundi ni muhimu sana katika jamhuri yetu na itasaidia pakubwa vijana wanaoinukia ambao hawakubahatika kwa masomo kama vile kwenda university na kusoma masomo mengine. Mheshimiwa Spika, ufundi huu pia haumaanishi kwamba wale waliosoma masomo ya university hawezi kushiriki. La, wanaweza kushiriki kwa sababu inasaidia pakubwa ili kuweza kupata ajira ama kujiajiri binafsi katika kazi ambazo umeweza kuhitimu. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa sasa ni taasisi chache sana katika nchi yetu ya Kenya ambayo zinatoa masomo ya kiufundi kwa vijana ambao labda wamemaliza madarasa la 8 ama wamemaliza masomo ya kidato cha 4 na hawakuweza kubahatika kwenda university. Kwa hivyo hii itasaidia pakubwa Mheshimiwa Spika kuweka mfumo ambao utakuwa unatoa mwongozo wa kisawasawa katika swala kama hili. Mheshimiwa Spika, nina maswala machache juu ya maelezo yani definition ya hii elimu ya kiufundi katika mswada huu. Tukiangalia katika kifungu cha pili, baadhi ya maelezo ya definition yanakuwa ni kama kurejelea mambo kama yale. Kwa mfano, tukiangalia public vocational education and training center means a vocational education and training center established, owned or operated by a county government and includes a sponsored vocational education and training center. Mheshimiwa Spika, hii ni kubadilisha maneno kama vile alivyofanya Mheshimiwa Senator Orengo juzi alipokuwa akisema kwamba swala la noun and verb are one and the same. Mheshimiwa Spika, ukiangalia pia vocational education and training mwisho hapa katika kifungu cha pili inamaanisha vocational education and training programs imparted in a trainee in a vocational and education training center, yani mafunzo yanayofundishwa katika kituo cha elimu ya kiufundi. Haitoi mwongozo kwa mfano Mheshimiwa, kwa kusema kwa mfano hivi masomo ya kiufundi ni masomo ya useremala, masomo ya ufundi wa kujenga, masomo ya kiufundi ya kuunganisha umeme yani electrical na mengineyo, kama masomo ya kiufundi ya kupika, masomo ya kiufundi ya kutengeneza vikapu na mambo kama hayo. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, ipo haja ya kuangalia kwa undani haya masuala ya vipi tutaweza kutambua masomo ya kiufundi. Haya maelezo yaliyopeanwa sasa Mheshimiwa Spika kwa mswada huu hayatoi mwongozo kamili wa masomo ya kiufundi. Mheshimiwa Spika, jambo la kufurahisha pia ni kwamba serikali zetu za kaunti zinapewa jukumu katika masomo haya ya kiufundi. Tumeona kwamba wengi wanapigania kazi za kuajiriwa, lakini Mheshimiwa Spika, kazi siku hizi nyingi zinaweza kujiajiri mwenyewe, na masomo ya kiufundi kama haya yanatoa fursa ya kuweza kujiajiri mwenyewe. Tatu, Mheshimiwa Spika, kuweka msingi ama standard ya kuweza kutambua ama ya kuweza kutahini wale wanaofanya mitihani masomo ya kiufundi. Mheshimiwa Spika, pia imekuwa ni swala zuri sana, kwa sababu tunaona wengi wanaofanya kazi za ufundi kwa sasa hawana certificate, isipokuwa wale ambao wanakwenda kupitia kwa government trade test, ambao kwa wengi wanashindwa kufanya hivyo, kwa sababu wengine wanatakana waende wakafanye masomo, wakaandike mtihani wa masomo ya oral, yani ya theory, ambayo kwa mfano hawakuweza kufaulu vizuri Kiingereza. Kwa hivyo inakuwa shida wao kuweza kupata shahada kupitia mfumo wa sasa. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, mswada huu utatoa fursa ya wale ambao wamesoma tu, wamefanya ile practical part, yani ile masomo ambayo ile kazi ambayo wanatakana kufanya, kwa mfano ni kujenga, kwa mfano ni kufanya kazi ya seremala, kwa mfano ni kazi ya kufanya plumbing ama fundi wa mifereji, wataweza kufanya mitihani kama ile bila ya kuwa na hofu kwamba wataanguka mtihani kwa sababu hawakusoma somo la Kiingereza, na kwa vile mitihani mingi imeandikwa kwa somo la Kiingereza. Mheshimiwa Spika, hivi vyuo pia vitakuwa na mfumo kamili ambao unatambulika, ili ukiwa unatoka kaunti moja kwenda kaunti nyingine unaweza kujiunga na chuo katika sehemu nyingine na uendelee na masomo yako bila ya kuwa na matatizo yote. Mheshimiwa Spika, tumeona pia kwamba hata wale ambao ni watu wenye ulemavu, watu wanaoishi na ulemavu, pia katika kifungu cha 7 wameweza kupewa nafasi pia wafundishwe wakiwa na special needs. Mheshimiwa Spika, najiunga pia na maseneta wenzangu kusema kuwa kwamba ule mfumo ambao kwa mfano kuwa na board of directors tuondoe, tuweke mfumo wa kuwa na board of management, ili kila anayekuwa pale anakuwa ni msimamizi wa vyuo vile, ili tuweze kuhakikisha kwamba kina usimamizi wa kisasa. Mheshimiwa Spika, tumeona kwamba zamani kule Mombasa tulikuwa na chuo cha Miome, yani Mombasa Islamic Institute, ambayo ilikuwa inatoa mafunzo kama haya. Baadaye ikageuzwa ikawa ni polytechnic na ikaendelea kwa polytechnic mpaka mwaka juzi katika miaka 2000 wakati ilipofanywa kuwa ni chuo kikuu tu. Hiyo imepoteza nafasi kubwa kwa watu wa Mombasa, kwa sababu yale masomo ya kiufundi ambayo yalikuwa yanafanyika pale hivi sasa hayapatikani, na hivyo inafanya kuwa watu wengi waweze kuondoka kuja kutafuta masomo yale katika sehemu zingine katika nchi. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, hizi vocational institute vyuo vya kiufundi ambavyo vimezungumziwa hapa vitasaidia kwa kubwa kuleta elimu ya kiufundi mashinani, kwa sababu elimu hii itakuwa inasaidia zaidi wale ambao wanapatikana mashinani, na wataweza kuwapa ajira na vile vile pia kuwapa ufundi ambao unahitajika katika kila sehemu. Mheshimiwa Spika, kuna sehemu zingine ambazo zina ufundi maalum. Kwa mfano ukienda Lamu utapata kwamba kuna waseremala wale ambao wanatengeneza zile Lamu carvings ama Lamu door, ambayo inasaidia inatoa taswira nzuri sana ya kaunti ya Lamu, na vile vile pia inapeana nafasi ya utalii, na pia inapeana nafasi ya kupata pesa nyingi kwa mifumo kama ile. Tukiangalia vyombo vinatengenezwa na ufundi kama ule, Mheshimiwa Spika, vinagharimu pesa nyingi kwa sababu ya ule ufundi wa kuchonga ambao unaambatana na taaluma hiyo. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, huu ufundi kama huu hauwezi kupatikana katika vyuo vya kisasa vya kiufundi, lakini inaweza kupatikana kwa wale ambao wameweza kuwa na taaluma ile kwa muda mrefu, na wengi wao, Mheshimiwa Spika, hawakuenda shule ambako wakaweza kufundishwa taaluma kama hiyo. Lakini tukitoa nafasi kama hii ya vyuo vya kiufundi, itawapa nafasi wale ambao wana taaluma kama hizi kuweza kuzipitisha kwa vizazi vifuatavyo, na hivyo naunga mkono Mheshimiwa Spika mswada huu, na najua utasaidia pakubwa kupunguza ukosefu wa ajira katika nchi yetu, na vile vile pia kuleta maendeleo, kwa sababu zile ambazo wale ambao watafundishwa watatumia ujuzi wao kusaidia kuinua uchumi wetu kwa njia mbalimbali, na hiyo itakuwa ni faida kubwa tumeweza kupata kwa mswada huu. Asante Bi Spika kwa kunipa fursa hii.
Senator Halake Abshiro Soka.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Let me also take this opportunity to congratulate Senator Milgo and her committee for a timely bill. This bill is definitely one that will strengthen the policy and regulatory framework for technical and vocational education in this country. But this bill does a lot of things and ticks a lot of boxes, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this bill, if implemented well, will definitely also be one that would strengthen our protection of counties and devolution, so to speak. Madam Speaker, I will not speak too much to the content of the bill because my colleagues have done justice to it. The bill has a lot of definitions and has defined a lot of the provisions very well. It has also really described the establishment, registration, and accreditation of vocational education, has also really set out the management of vocational education and training centers, and quality standards have been set, as well as the transitional provisions. With that, I think I'm happy. But one of the things that we need as an institution or as Parliament, as we make laws, is to really look at the relevance, the quality, and the alignment to the country's strategies, policies, and what we call, the development agenda of the country. Towards what end are our institutions aligned? To what strategies are our institutions aligned? Do we have the right institutions? Is it relevant with the courses that we're going to, and what courses are we going to offer? Madam Speaker, one of the things that we need to then do is that our legislative proposals, do they improve the relevance, the quality, employability, say, of our youth, for instance, in this particular case, and which the answer is, which Senator Milgo is yes. But what do we have? What have we put in place to ensure that counties are able to do some of the roles you have assigned to them? And just looking at the roles that was assigned to counties, for which I was a bit concerned, was that, for them then to be able to be responsible for staffing of personnel of vocational training and institutions, supervision of vocational education and training within the county. If we know what our counties are as it is, will they be able to supervise, say, good skills level that is going to be provided at our TVET institutions and do justice to it? Where will they get, that capacity themselves to be able then to supervise? Provide funds necessary, I think that is okay, because somebody must implement the policies, strategies, and standards developed by the county government for the delivery of vocational education and training and implementation of this act. Again, perhaps the alignment to the broader national policies and legislative frameworks and regulations need to be the line of sight needs to be very clear, so that then we don't have different standards being implemented and being supervised by different counties. But that having been said, Madam Speaker, I congratulate the team. I don't want to speak too much to this, but the other issue is the measurement. What will the counties be measuring? Are they going to measure, did we do 1,000 students who then don't have the requisite skills to do the needs? Have we then put the provisions in place so that the measurements are not just to churn out numbers, but also are aligned to the outcomes we want. For instance, the capacities that we need in the county for the socio-economic development of the county, for the employment of the county youths, and such things become the measure of success in this particular case. Madam Speaker, again, we need to align the county development plans to the needs of the capacity of the county, and then from there, look at things like, what do we need? Do we need skills in building construction? Do we need skills in power and energy generation, in water distribution, in large public works, agro-processing, hospitality, and other value adds to perhaps the oil we are doing in Turkana, or the mining we are doing in Kwale. So again, our legislation must be aligned to these kinds of strategies for socio-economic development, because it's not an end in itself to produce 1,000 people who have said they have a certification, but who do not have the requisite skills for specific needs of the county, be it agro-processing, be it hospitality, be it value addition to our mining industry, for instance, or for solar projects, for instance. So again, these are some of the things. But again, congratulations for making sure that you mentioned the need for having ICT integrated into all our trainings, because again, it can be an area for quality improvement, it can be an area for technology transfer and innovation, and could also be an area that would definitely add value in terms of just the e-learning and future of our pedagogy, so to speak, Madam Speaker. Again, TVET training or technical training or vocational training in itself does not ensure that we have jobs. It is what we do with the skills and how aligned the skills are. Again, integrating things like ensuring flexibility, for instance. If, let's say, in Isiolo County, we are training, say, for hospitality industry because we want to be, a resort city, we must build a flexibility into these trainings so that as things change, as we now start going into solar energy, as LabSet corridor comes to our neighborhood, we can flexibly and quickly then integrate some of these things. Madam Speaker, again, as I finish and as I congratulate the team and the committee, one of the things that we need to really look at in terms of the capabilities and capacities is the whole issue of making sure that we are ensuring that education systems and quality improvement and technological improvement are not just left to the county, but is also, triangulated with the national government so that our counties have, the same quality standards as opposed to then everybody having different levels. So with those few remarks, Madam Speaker, I thank you for giving me the opportunity. I look forward to really the implementation of this, and the capacity this has is to also change the minds of the people so that we don't look at technical education and vocational education as some inferior education. In countries like Canada, the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology is one of the places where students don't even finish the college. Industry starts to grab them. Again, what partnerships do we have with private sector? Should we be giving tax rebates and tax exemptions for industries that are providing technical training and providing internships and things like that, so that then we don't expect government to have all the answers and have all the capacity building, and we then start getting into areas of partnerships where we are also incentivizing the private sector to help us in this process. So I hope those kinds of things can be built into this legislation, so that then we start encouraging our industry to be part of this journey, because really this is going to be a really good innovative piece of legislation that is going to turn our country around and provide employment and also add value to all the things we need to grow to make sure our counties are thriving. I thank you, Madam Speaker. I cede the rest of my time and I congratulate the committee once again.
You've consumed all your time, Honorable Senator. Senator Haji Faria Ali.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I also wish to thank Senator Milgo and her committee for the foresight to address a glaring gap in legislation. Madam Speaker, we've been churning out a lot of white-collar jobs in our institutions. The question I have is, have people been, in schools, when people are finishing schools, are there proper career guidance in terms of where people have skills and they can branch into? Because we cannot explain that everybody goes to university and we have a lot of graduates out there who don't have jobs. So that's some of the things I question is, what mechanism has the Ministry of Education inculcated in schools to ensure that students are properly guided in terms of which career to take? And then the other thing is the career and job market match. Even that needs to be discussed in schools, because we need to identify where are the gaps in terms of knowledge that we need, because we cannot afford to be people who are, for you to have 2 people of white-collar job, we will need around 10 people of blue-collar job. So if we are only training white-collar job, how are we going to get them jobs? And then the other thing is Madam Speaker, the other thing is that manufacturing is one of the Jubilee manifesto in terms of how to create jobs and how to produce. We cannot be an economy that is just consuming. We have to be an economy that is producing. Otherwise, we will finish all the resources we have and we'll have nothing to pay for our bills. And that is where we are heading if we don't change our course. So I'm glad that through this bill, that is going to change, Madam Speaker. And then the other thing is, if we produce locally all the equipment that we need in this country, we'll be saving a lot of foreign exchange. And that means also our economy develops in tandem with how much skillful our population is. Madam Speaker, in terms of ICT, actually I'm kind of disappointed because ICT in Kenya, we were ahead in terms of, mobile banking, other things. It's an innovation that was great. Then what happened in between? I think we need to harness that, because that is the future of how things will go in terms of innovation and development. We need to identify where is the pain in terms of for the society and how can we address to make money. Because unless you solve a problem, you can never make money. So that is how we should be looking at it. And then there is also a need for specialization. Senator Wetangula talked about different people going to different counties. You can only do that if each county has its own specialization, and anybody who needs that specialization goes to that county. Otherwise, if all of us mass produce, we will have, blue-collar jobs that also don't have jobs as well again. So I think it is need to have specialization. This county specializes in this. And everybody knows that Wajir County is specialist in animal, related training, that if you go there, that is where you will find. And if that is their interest, that is where you go. Not everybody doing the same thing and then nothing happens. And then I tend to think that if we go for training, then it means we have to be self-employing. We should be able to employ ourselves. And if we are employing ourselves, we need startup capital. Senator Milgo, maybe this is one of the things you need to add, that part of the curriculum development in terms of the county, their priority should be capital, injection, even if it is a revolving fund where people, you give this one returns, this other one takes, so that it doesn't have to be, because people need to be responsible financially. You can give them soft loan that is without interest, so that at least when they start up, they don't have to struggle again paying with a loan with a lot of interest from a bank, which consumes all their profit, then there is no incentive to do the work. And then finally, there is need to match skills to the market. What is necessary? What is necessary in our market? What is necessary in the neighboring country? What is necessary in Canada, wherever it is that you need to address? But there is need to do that in absence of job market with the skill matching, then whatever else that we will do will just waste of resources. Madam Speaker, I support, and I also wish to cede my time.
Thank you, Senator, for ceding your time. Finally, Senator Shebeni Masi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to also say something on this bill. I want to say that this is a very important bill, and I want to congratulate Senator Milgo's committee for taking care of this matter in this republic. Madam Speaker, this bill is very timely, and I say this because when you look at the future of workforce in Kenya, or maybe even the world, it's aimed at what skills one has. You know, we are going to look at what technical capacity one has, and this will be able to, pay your bills and get you some coins here and there. So, Madam Speaker, having frameworks put in place to ensure that we plan for our future and the future labor force is very critical, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, when you look at Clause 3, it speaks about guiding principles. And particularly 3B, it talks about equality, equity, and non-discrimination in the provision of the vocational training. Recognition of trainees with special needs. Madam Speaker, this is very important because you realize that young people who are disabled or young people living with disabilities, most of the time are not incorporated when it comes to the educational sector, Madam Speaker. So therefore, Madam Speaker, this bill really shows that we are not going to leave anyone behind, that we are going to give opportunity even for young people who have disabilities in this country, Madam Speaker. When you look at Clause 4, it talks about obligations of the national government, and I want to agree with this bill that the national government deals with standards, policy, curriculum development, accreditation of institutions, and so on. But most importantly, Madam Speaker, the aspect of monitoring and evaluation of vocational programs. I think this is very important because many times we develop programs, but we don't see them to conclusion. We don't see what is working for us or what does not work. We don't keep checking to see the relevance of these programs, Madam Speaker. So I think that is a very important aspect of this clause, Madam Speaker. When you look at Clause 5, it talks about obligations of the county governments. And one of the clauses that I really liked is the one that ensures that county governments carry out public awareness and advocacy. Madam Speaker, this will go well towards changing the attitude and perception about TVETs in our country, Madam Speaker. Sharing information will change the attitudes of young people towards vocational training. And lastly, Madam Speaker, when you look at that clause, it talks about promotion and circulation of up-to-date information to the public, so that we don't rely on information that is not there, that information that is up-to-date and it will serve the young people of this country. When you look at Clause 7, Madam Speaker, it talks about trainee with special needs. Again, we are not leaving anyone behind, that young people with disabilities and special needs are taken care of, and they're given this very important training and education. When you look at Clause 32, again, it talks about examination and competency, and especially 1B, issue of certificate to a trainee. I think, Madam Speaker, painters, masons, plumbers, and electricians need to be considered as professionals in this country. They're given certificates that will ensure that we can market our technicians out here. Lastly, Madam Speaker, I think the national government should also conduct a skills gap analysis in the country as they consider the courses for the trainees, they consider the gaps in the workforce, so that we're not
thank all the senators that have contributed to this bill. Very many of them, well over 15. And in this case, we have a lot of amendments to make to this bill, a lot of cleaning to be done. Without mentioning the names of the senators, I've said, I think up to 17 senators have contributed, and very interesting and good clauses to be added there. Notable among them is, in this case, linkage to entrepreneurial and micro enterprises, and in this case, benchmark with the best practices, advertisement, and if, and for that matter, even ensuring that we have the skills to export rather than exporting maybe tea and domestic households. Madam Speaker, I think there is a lot to be done to this bill, and my committee is equal to the task. As I reply, I want to thank my strong committee, the Secretariat, and everyone that has had an input to this particular bill, because this will go a long way to actually be a game changer to the economy of our country. Madam Speaker, I then beg to reply, and I wish to request that pursuant to Standing Order 613, the putting of the question be deferred to a later date. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
That is granted. It will be put at a later date once next time it is listed. Honorable Senators, it is now 6:30 p.m. Time to adjourn the House. The Senate therefore stands adjourned until Tuesday, 20th July 2021 at 2:30 p.m.
Job at the university, I wouldn't consider this as impediment to my delivery at the university.
But as a member of the commission, you would consider this an impediment?
Because my consideration is the fact that the commission position is a full-time position to the extent that it's an 8-5 requirement, because this is what the amended act says.
And Article 88.3 of the Constitution also says you can't do that.
Sorry?
Article 8.3 of the Constitution also says you can't do that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Now, let me ask you, in your case study, there was a question on dead voters, and I just want us to go on dead voters.
Dead?
Dead, yes,
yes, yes.
In your case study, and we looked at your response. Now, do you think, in your estimation, an election can be invalidated because a register was found to have, for example, 1 million dead voters? Does that make an election invalid? The mere fact of having 1 million dead voters on the register.
I would like to seek clarification, Mr. Kimuli. If there is evidence, and if an evidence can be adduced to the fact that this or some of these dead voters actually voted.
So if the dead voters are not shown to have voted, it is not illegal per se to have dead voters in the register?
It is not appropriate to have them. It is illegal to have them in the register.
Is it illegal to have them in the register?
It is.
Dead voters.
In my consideration, it is.
But you understand that because people die every day, there is a chance that every day there is somebody who died yesterday who is in the register. Are you saying that the register becomes invalid every time somebody dies?
Invalidation and being inappropriate are two different things. The number also matters, Mr. Kimuli. If we are talking about 10,000 dead voters in the register who have not voted, who it can be proved have not voted, is different from having 1 million dead registered voters in the register. That actually indicates negligence of duty on the part of the Commission in updating the register, because how is it that 1 million voters out of 15 million or 20 million, that is substantial.
Now, I get you. Now, you said one of the ways of dealing with that problem, which you consider to be grave, is to connect the voter register with the register of persons, that is IDs. You think that is one way of dealing with it?
Yes, sir. I believe if, for instance, to the extent that declaration of deaths are done, there are still some who will escape, who will not have notified the registrar of persons on the death of a person. But at least majority of Kenyans notify, because they have to take a burial permit, and that permit then forms a record that can connect the registration with the voter. That if those two are connected in terms of technology, I would believe that the problem would be minimized, if not eliminated.
But you realize that while you suggest that one problem of dealing with it, one way of dealing with it is by linking the two, you realize that you cannot vote without your ID, without being registered.
Correct.
So in some way, the two processes are